with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, January 4th, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Trump caught on tape, leaning on Georgia election officials to give him the win for the election that happened almost 3 months ago. Meanwhile, with the federal government AWOL on vaccine distribution, it's a mess. This, as experts predict, well over 100,000 deaths in January. Meanwhile, Senate hangs in the balance with the Georgia runoff tomorrow. British judge rejects extradition of Julian Assange. Nancy Pelosi reelected Speaker of the House as progressives leverage a key rollback of the PAYGO rules. At least 12 Republican senators herald in a new era of compromise by challenging Biden's election win. Senate overrides Trump's veto. Schumer folds on the $2,000 checks. Janet Yellen, Tony Blinken slammed for buck raking before entering the Biden administration. And lastly, hundreds of Google employees decide to unionize. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. It is a new year. Emma, welcome. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you. It feels good to have 2020 over with, even though everything is still the same.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I was waking up hoping, I can't remember when it was, Friday morning, hoping that 2021 would feel measurably different. And sadly, no. In fact, we could be facing the worst month of the pandemic to start off 2021. We still apparently have a contentious election that is ongoing. And of course,
who knows what will happen?
Who knows what will happen? I think we know what the outcome is going to be. The real question is going to be how the Democrats react to this. If Joe Biden continues to believe that the fever will be broken, those are Barack Obama's words, but Joe Biden, I'm paraphrasing Joe Biden, his belief that things are going to come around with the Republicans once Donald Trump is out of the way.
And he returns the soul, or restores the soul of America.
The soul of America will return as well. And so we shall see. But it is 2021. I know that you are a little disappointed because your football team, apparently, you enjoy that football.
The New York Football Giants.
The New York football team, or one of them.
Well, you know what? That's just... I've been saving since I didn't go to any Giants games this year. I'm going to buy tickets next year, obviously, because you couldn't go this year.
I hadn't contemplated that, but that's got to be a substantial savings.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had StubHub gift cards that I hoarded, and I'm going to spend it all on the Eagles game so I can heckle that Doug Peterson decision to tank and cost my Giants a playoff game, which they didn't earn, but I digress.
I didn't understand anything you just said.
That's fine. You brought it up, so.
No, I know, but I understand what gift cards are, but that's about it. And we should also say, over the break, we well-timed it. We got 1 million subscribers. We reached 1 million subscribers on YouTube, and so that is encouraging.
Congrats to this whole team. I joined late. I'll take full, responsibility for the 1 million subscribers, obviously. But I guess some credit to you.
Well deserved. And of course, we also are playing on the Peacock app, on the Choice channel on Peacock app. You can see us We run at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. and then in the wee hours of the morning and on demand for I think going back a week. So if you miss any part of the first hour of the program, check it out on the Peacock app. And so it is the new year, and really we had obviously a lot of things that went on over the past week, from sort of major, more expansive things involving the rollout of the vaccinations in this country, which have been largely at this point a failure if measured against the benchmark that the government set for it, that the Trump administration set. Hopefully that will pick up. We will talk about that. We have a real problem in New York as well, New York State, and it's indicative of one of the vacuum that's created when the federal government does not have a specific plan. We will talk about that because Andrew Cuomo has basically ignored the infrastructure that exists for just these very moments because he likes to please his donors. But we will talk about that as the program progresses as well. We also, looking forward, tomorrow is a hugely consequential day for the next 2 years, the next 4 years, frankly. We have a runoff in Georgia. Kelly Loeffler, who is in a seat in a temporary basis because, and this is actually a seat that will come up for re-election in 2 years. That's why we have two elections there. This is a special election, essentially, runoff. She is running against Raphael Warnock, the Democrat, and we have David Perdue is up for normal re-election in a runoff against John Ossoff. And we will dig into this a little bit more, but as the show progresses, it's very hard to determine, to read tea leaves.
Coin flips, both of them.
Both of them really more or less coin flips. There are encouraging signs, but it almost is not worth discussing.
Yeah.
Because
we've been burned so many times with these encouraging signs about, oh, look at the turnout in 2016, early turnout for Hillary Clinton.
Exactly.
Look at the turnout in this state. And what do you know? It looks like there are a lot of enthusiastic Republican Trumpy voters, too, that kind of dispel this notion that early voting tends to only help Democrats.
We know that there's younger voters
Yes.
who are voting, that the numbers of African Americans who are voting are all encouraging signs in Georgia. It's also, there has been a tremendous amount of dissent on the Republican side. We are going to get to the big story, of course. Donald Trump caught on tape. It is an unbelievable hour of audio. We won't play it all, obviously, but we will talk about that. But here is Kelly Loeffler walking this tightrope. Both Loeffler and Perdue had to come out in the past couple of days for $2,000 checks because it was being pushed by Ossoff and Warnock. Bernie Sanders was leading the charge on the Hill for
After
these
Trump
2,000.
gave him this opening.
He was pushing for it. And then Trump also basically came out for it. And Nancy Pelosi, to her credit, and I'm not necessarily very loose with providing credit for Nancy Pelosi. After it failed on unanimous consent, because Republicans blocked it in the House, they had a full vote on it. They pushed it to the Senate very quickly. And we will talk about what happened to it there. But here is Kelly Loeffler trying to walk a tightrope because she can't come out in favor of anything anymore because of what's happening on the Republican side. Here she is being asked on Fox News, I believe it is, about the why she didn't vote on the National Defense Authorization vote, because there was an attempt by the Democrats, one which was abandoned at one point, to hold up this vote to force McConnell to give a vote on the $2,000 checks. Here is that clip.
A lot of people look at this race and think President Trump may have put you and Senator Perdue in a box First, when he threatened to not sign the COVID stimulus and government funding, then he signed it. Then by after that, demanding or calling for additional direct payments, which you then supported. And then by vetoing the National Defense Bill, which you originally supported and voted for. Why didn't you vote on the veto override Friday in the Senate?
Well, look, I've stood with the president 100% of the time. He's putting America first. He's fought for our men and women in the military. He restored our strength in our Department of Defense and our national security. But look, I have to be out across this state campaigning to make sure that Georgians turn out and vote on January 5th, because none of this will matter if we don't win on the 5th. Look, Chuck Schumer has said he's going to defund our military by 25%. Raphael Warnock, John Ossoff, they would be rubber stamps for defunding the military, the police, raising taxes, ushering in government-run health care, weakening our Second Amendment rights, opposing our religious freedom. That's all on the ballot here in Georgia, January 5th. That's what I'm fighting for, is to preserve the future of our country.
Understanding the campaigning is important, and you're saying how important this election is on January 5th, but obviously Georgia is a big defense state, current and former military here, defense business here. How would you have voted had you voted on that veto override?
Well, look, I voted to support the NDAA. The bill that came out of conference was very different from what we'd been promised. So I don't know. I was here in Georgia working across the state, and I will continue to stand with our men and women in the military. Raphael Warnock will not stand for our military. He's attacked them. He said you can't serve God and serve in the military.
Right, but you would have sustained the veto, the president's veto, on the NDAA.
Look, what's at stake here is our military and our freedoms. Those are what's on the ballot right now. And I'm the daughter and granddaughter of veterans. We're the 5th largest state for veterans and active duty military here in Georgia. I have fought for our military and made sure that we get the funding we need. And we're going to continue to do that. But if we don't win on January 5th, our military will be defunded and worse.
I won't belabor it, but that's not a yes or no whether you would sustain the veto or not.
That's right.
Okay, you're not answering that. Listen, Senator Joe Manchin.
I like that. I like that. That was the one moment she's ever appeared human on television.
That, I mean, up until that moment, I was going to say she should be moonlighting, teaching a learning annex class on how not to answer a question at all.
Very useful skill for politicians. She could actually, if she loses to Raphael Warnock, that can be her new full-time gig on the side of enriching herself through her stock portfolio, through questionable, dubious legal means, obviously.
I got to think her advisor, she walks off the set and her advisor going like, you had it until the last second. Why didn't you just say like, oh, Brett, or something like that, rather than, yes, I'm not going to answer the question. I'm definitely not going to take a position on that after all that time. Now, I want to know what happens, what's worse in her mind than defunding the military. Like, is Raphael Warnock saying that he's going to, like, what's he, like, he's going to not only defund the military.
He's going to defund the police first and then defund the military.
But she said, like, defund, I guess maybe, like, I don't know, maybe like making them all become Antifa or something like that.
Well, you know who just tried to defund the military was Donald Trump.
Well, Donald Trump did indeed. That's
vetoed the NDAA.
Or worse.
You know, it was ostensibly trying to get those $2,000 checks, which he completely gave up on very quickly. But I was sort of in favor of that until Democrats joined with Republicans to override it, with the exception of, you know, Ed Markey, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, et cetera.
There was a couple others who joined in that. And to be fair, also, he wanted Section 230 repealed of the Digital Millennium Act, and he wanted none of the bases that have been named after the secessionists in the Civil War. He wanted them to be renamed renamed as they were before. But so that's where he is. And I should also say one other note. Kelly Loeffler read off a list of things that the Democrats are going to do if they take the Senate, which included, you know, government-run health care, checks for everybody. I mean, the list went on. And I have to say,
awesome.
That is whatever world Kelly Loeffler is living in. That's the one that I want to move to. That America sounds quite good to me.
Well, look, she's caught in a completely unenviable position if you feel sympathy for her between McConnell and Trump. I know I don't either. But McConnell's really the one who is responsible for the fact that we don't have these $2,000 checks. And she can't say that because, you know, she's a part of his caucus. But that's really where she's at. So she can't take a position either way because then she's caught between these two leaders of the Republican Party, one who's leaving, one who resonates with the base, and the one who's the actual kingmaker and puppet master behind the scenes.
It's going to be fascinating to see if her strategy of demonizing Warnock is going to prove successful. And to his credit, the moment, literally, I think the next day after he realized they were going to a runoff after the election, he put out an ad saying, get ready for it because she's going to throw the kitchen sink at me because she's not running on anything. She can't even answer a simple, basic question on Fox. Listen, when you're a Republican politician and you're on Fox and you get hung up like that, you know you've got a problem.
She's supremely untalented as a politician on top of the general corruption and moral vacuousness.
She's very good at picking stocks, though, if she has inside information.
That she's talented at. I mean, her software has been updated.
That's right. Folks, you probably know that Liquid IV, we've talked about it quite a bit in the studio. I don't know how we're doing on Liquid IV here. I got my my matcha is there. And this is what...
I can't see through our plastic divider.
Oh, that's right. I got the bag up there. Liquid IV's energy multiplier is an absolute game changer. It gives you a little extra boost that we all need, and it hydrates you. One stick is like drinking 2 cups of coffee, and it's all natural alternative to processed energy drinks for a sustained energy boost throughout the day. You've seen me drink this. You've seen me drink it almost every single day during COVID in particular.
I'm always paying attention to your hydration. So
exactly.
Gotta make sure Sam's energy levels
But my
are up.
favorite of the Liquid IVs, although I have to say that there's 1 or 2 flavors that came out that were like special. I can't remember what they were, but my go-to is the matcha and green energy blend. It tastes delicious. It provides me that energy boost. Liquid IV's got cellular transport technology. It delivers the optimal ratio of nutrients for more efficient uptake. Enhanced rapid absorption into the bloodstream gives you lasting energy boost fast. Over the course of vacation, I'm not going to lie, did indulge in stuff that would dehydrate you, liquor, in many instances.
Yeah, like how you specify.
I don't want to be specific, but it was an alcoholic beverage. And every morning, the way I get up, coffee will dehydrate you. This, you get your energy boost and it hydrates you. That's for me what I like the best. I mean, when I flew, I haven't flown in a while, but when I fly or when I overindulge, or when I need a pick me up in the morning, it's Liquid IV for me. I love it. I give it out as, it's not a great gift. I mean, it's not like something, but it's like a little stocking stuffer. Right now, you can grab your energy Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 25% off when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the promo code Majority Rep, not Majority Report, Majority Rep at checkout. That's 25% off anything when you use the promo code Majority Rep at liquidiv.com. Start fueling your adventures today at liquidiv.com. Promo code Majority Rep. I am now almost fully Brooklynized. Like every sheet in the house, my kids' sheets, I am still like a couple of like big pillowcases short.
Brooklinized?
Yeah, Brooklynized. That's what I call it.
I think you said Brooklynized. I was like, that is where we are.
That is where we are. I think that's actually where Brooklinen is. I know that you...
I have Brooklinen.
You do?
I do.
Oh, there you go.
I got it as a birthday gift.
Boom. Well, you may not know this, but Brooklinen was started by Rich and Vicky, I think from Brooklyn. They also tried to find beautiful home essentials that didn't cost an arm and a leg, and when they couldn't, they founded Brooklinen as the first direct-consumer bedding company. They have a variety of sheets, colors, and patterns, materials to fit your taste and needs. They got like The classic, which is the one I like, the sort of like, it's like the cotton crisp sheets.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite. But they also have the more sort of luxury, like not luxury, but softer version, which I don't like. I like the crisper, cooler sheets. But other people like the others. But that's why they got both.
I don't know which one I have, but I love them.
Brooklinen has over 50,000 5-star reviews and counting. They're so confident you're going to love their products. They even offer a 365-day money-back guarantee. I've got comforters from them now. I've got towels. I've got bath mat. That bath mat is actually...
A good bath mat?
Yeah, you don't really think about it until you get a good one. And then you're like, this feels good. I get out of the shower.
It doesn't mold or anything like that?
No,
Those things can become... Yeah.
What are you doing with your bath mats?
No, I'm not doing anything with them, but I've bought cheap ones, and you notice the difference. I don't have a Brooklinen one yet.
You got to get them because it feels very nice under your feet anyways. But it's 2021. Do something nice for yourself. Start the new year. Help you do that? Brooklinen has a special offer. You go to brooklinen.com, use the promo code majority. You get $25 off when you spend $100 or more, plus free shipping. That's Brooklinen, BROOKLINEN.com. Enter promo code majority. Get $25 off when you spend more than $100, plus you get free shipping. Brooklinen.com. Use promo code majority at checkout. Lastly, 2021, I made this decision like a couple of years ago anyways, I think, where it's just like I am buying less, but making sure I love it. And that's what I'm doing with my socks now too. I used to go and I would like go get like, I can get 400 pairs of socks for $15.
Yeah.
But then within a week, I've got holes in them and they're not good. And I mentioned this to Brendan when I got these socks, and he was like, I love those. I've never heard anybody love socks, but there's a reason. Runners worldwide have made Features their sock of choice, and now you can get the same benefits, especially tailored for just walking around, for going on the golf course, for whatever it is you do. Features Elite Golf Socks keeps your feet cool, dry, and blister-free, providing a custom-like fit that won't bunch or slip during your backswing. They have targeted compression, hugs the arch of your foot, keeping the sock in place. They have anatomical design. It conforms. You ready for this? They're left and right socks. They're labeled.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I thought it would be a weird thing, but it's not. You actually feel the difference. It gives you a custom-like fit. It reduces discomfort, reduces blisters, helps you enhance your golf game if that's what you're looking to do. But for me, when I'm walking to work, I feel it. I feel the difference. If at any point you're unsatisfied, you can get a replacement pair, no questions asked. It has changed. I've been walking quite a bit, obviously during COVID, and I feel the difference. You wouldn't think you do, but you do. And I know, Brendan, you're big on them for running. Brendan's a big runner. Feature socks will change how you feel about socks forever. Trust me on this. And you can get $10 off your first pair of Features when you use the code majority at features.com. That's Features, FEETURES.com. Promo code majority for $10 off your first pair of Features. Check it out, folks.
Nice.
All right. So let's jump into this really stunning audio tape. Now, there is plenty of reason to believe that what Donald Trump does here is illegal, that it is an abuse of power.
Certainly seems illegal.
And there was a piece in the New York Times that basically there is a belief amongst our elite, for whatever reason. We saw this with Barack Obama when he came into office. He said, we need to turn the page. The idea that you would not pursue, you could impeach Donald Trump after the fact. You could try and bring charges against him. You could do a criminal investigation and put out a report that at the very least, and provide some sanctions here. The people around him who are involved, which in many respects, I think may be even more important, because nothing Donald Trump has done over the course of the 4 years that has been criminal or abuse of power or whatever could have been done without the help of enablers, people working in the White House, people working in Congress, people working in senators. None of this could be done without them. And in sending a message that if you're around the president and they're doing something that is illegal, that you can't get it, that you will not escape punishment, can have the same level of efficacy, in my mind, as punishing the president. And they should.
But unfortunately, the issue with that is that they feel like it will be used against them in retribution the next time the next party is in power. I mean, that is what prevents them from actually holding the powerful to account in these instances.
Potentially, or maybe they don't want to be held to account themselves, you're right, or maybe they don't want the distraction. But the idea that this is a distraction, there is a reason. You can go back and look at the pardons that took place in Watergate, and you can just follow a pattern into Iran-Contra, to the savings and loans crisis. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And the reason why is because every time somebody crosses a line and is not punished in any way, the next person, that line is already crossed. They just find another line that they can cross.
And it culminates in the president who says, I could shoot someone in the middle of Fifth Avenue and get away with it. And just then also did a bunch of allegedly illegal things while in office. I mean, he was brazenly against the law and in violation of it. And the American people didn't care because past presidents had gotten away with so much.
Now, this is an hour-long tape that was made, I believe, I mean, it's unclear who made the tape, but the Washington Post obtained it very quickly after it happened. It seems like within hours. And there was a tweet between Donald Trump and Brett Raffensperger, who is the Secretary of State in Georgia, where Donald Trump characterized what Raffensperger said. And Raffensperger did a quote tweet where he said, and commented saying, that's not what was said on the phone call. The truth will come out. Now, maybe he was just talking generally, or maybe he knew specifically. We don't know where the audio tape was developed. As far as I know, more than likely it came out of Raffensperger's office, and it was released.
It only benefits him and his team.
Exactly. And here is a compilation. It's a little bit long, but it's a compilation of some of the greatest hits. On the phone is Raffensperger and his lawyer, Ryan Germany. At one point, Donald Trump says, Ryan may be a good lawyer, and he's got a great last name, which was just a weird...
Because they were discussing the Dominion Germany conspiracies theory by Sidney Powell. So, like, it all ties together, man. Raffensperger blocking Trump from overturning the election results in Georgia, and his lawyer has the same last name as the country that changed the election results via Dominion.
And also on the call, I don't know if we hear her, and this is Cleta Mitchell. She is one of the attorneys working on, I guess, the Trump steal the election program. I'm not sure exactly what they call it in the White House, but here is, now, let me just be clear. I can give you like an overall view of what the call was. It's an hour long. I guess you could listen to it if you really wanted. I mean, it starts off, he's just bat crap crazy. Like he's just rambling for, I don't know, it feels like 25 minutes without letting anybody else speak. And he's just going on and on. It's like literally he's just regurgitating everything he heard on OWN. On WorldNet Daily or whatever it is. And then Raffensperger comes in and says, well, Mr. President, I've heard everything you said, and I'm sorry, but none of that is true. And then after they start to refute or say that they've examined specific things he brings up, he shifts. And I think most of these clips are from that. He shifts to something that's more, the argument is no longer he's arguing why there has been something stolen. The argument just becomes why they should help him. Here we go. Let's play this.
Based on all of this. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, Brad. You know, I mean, having a correct, the people of Georgia are angry. And these numbers are going to be repeated on Monday night, along with others that we're going to have by that time, which are much more substantial even. And the people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, you know, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have.
Just make it clear. What he's saying to Raffensperger is, I'm coming there Monday night. That's tonight. I'm doing a rally. I'm going to repeat everything I've told you. So this has moved. Now, look, a rally has nothing to do with an argument that the election has been stolen. Unless you are saying, look, I'm going to come there and I'm going to put you in political peril. I'm going to repeat these numbers and you're going to look bad if you don't do anything about this. See, the nature of the conversation has changed now. This is when we start getting into Donald Trump has spent the first 25 minutes as Professor Trump, where he's explaining all these theories about how he won the election that are honestly just bat crap crazy. But then he moves into, I can't say specifically, I'm giving you an offer you can't refuse because
he's mobster Trump now.
He's mobster Trump. And the first thing that I imagine Donald Trump learned from his father was, you don't put anything in writing and you assume everybody you're talking to is wired. All right, continue with this.
Recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
Now, do you think it's possible that they shredded ballots in Fulton County? Because that's what the rumor is. And also that Dominion took out machines. That Dominion is really moving fast to get rid of their machinery. Do you know anything about that? Because that's illegal.
This is Ryan, Germany. No, Dominion has not moved any machinery out of Fulton County. We're having.
Well, but have they moved? Have they moved the inner parts of the machines and replaced them with other parts?
No.
You sure, Ryan?
I'm sure.
Ooh, that hurts.
The inner parts.
You just want to have an accurate election. And you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, I know you don't. No, you don't. You don't have. Not even close. You're off by hundreds of thousands of votes. You know what they did, and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense. And you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk. But they are shredding ballots, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, and they are removing machinery, and they're moving it as fast as they can, both of which are criminal fines, and you can't let it happen, and you are letting it happen. I'm notifying you that you're letting it happen. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
Okay, now pause it for 1 second. Now, what's fascinating here is, right, he first said, like, I'm going to say these numbers at a rally. You're going to be in trouble politically because the people of Georgia are mad. Now he's shifting to like, hey, there's criminality here. Yeah. And you could argue you didn't know about it, but now I'm putting you on notice. Now you know there's criminality there, so you could have criminal liability, guys. And look, there's a way to get out of this criminal liability. I know I'm talking a lot about accuracy of the vote and this and that, but we don't need to count every vote. That's not important. The important thing is we know overall I won. So all we need to do is come up with one more vote than what I lost by, and then justice is served.
Yeah, I mean, it's working backwards from the I won conclusion. And like you said, he moved from you're going to have political consequences and face them from voters, which is not an illegal threat, I would think, or maybe harder to prove in court, although all of this might be hard to prove in court, to he's saying you might have legal trouble, Raffensperger, the Georgia Secretary of State, if he doesn't bend to Trump's will here. That's as close to a threat as it gets, and he keeps going.
Continue.
So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this. And it's going to be very costly. In many ways.
Yeah.
And I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it, and you can re-examine it, but re-examine it with people that want to find answers, not people that don't want to find answers.
Get my
For instance, I'm hearing Ryan, and he's probably, I'm sure, a great lawyer and everything, but he's making statements about those ballots that he doesn't know. But he's making them with such, he did make them with surety, but now I think he's less sure, because the answer is they all went to Biden. And that alone wins us the election by a lot. You know. So.
Mr. President, you have people that submit information, and we have our people that submit information, and then it comes before the court, and the court then has to make a determination. We have to stand by our numbers. We believe our numbers are right.
Well, under law, you're not allowed to give faulty election results, okay? You're not allowed to do that, and that's what you've done.
Be careful.
This is a faulty election result. And honestly, this should go very fast. You should meet tomorrow, because you have a big election coming up, and because of what you've done to the president, you know, the people of Georgia know that this was a scam. And because of what you've done to the president, a lot of people aren't going out to vote. And a lot of Republicans are going to vote negative because they hate what you did to the president. Negative. Okay? They hate it. And they're going to vote. And if you would be respected, really respected, if this thing could be straightened out before the election. You have a big election coming up on Tuesday.
So now we're back to the
now we're back to, like, this is the cost you're going to pay in your own state.
This is a lot like that Ukrainian call to get dirt on Joe Biden.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is how he's behaved in his business life, his entire career. Hasn't worked out that well. Multiple bankruptcies make that obvious. But he behaves like a mobster. He behaves like a 2-bit mobster.
And here's what's also sort of stunning about this, right? I mean, now this may be a little bit like, I don't know, small bore in some respect. But the president, in the first half hour of the call, like, he's outlining this stuff all from memory. Like, he's got every conspiracy, theory right at the tip of his fingers. The dude's on the phone for an hour with these people, trying to cajole them in any way, and probably prepped for, I don't know, days for this call in terms of how much he's consumed. He's not doing anything. He's not doing the job of the country at this point. He is 24/7, to the extent that he's not, he's golfing, obviously, at times. But he's not presidenting in the middle of a pandemic where we have experts anticipating, and we're at 350,000 some odd dead in this country. Experts are now anticipating up to 150,000 dead within the next month. We have no federal plan to roll out this vaccination. And we're 18 million vaccinations, or, full-on vaccinations behind where they said that we would be. And he is spending all of his time, presumably Mark Meadows is too, the chief of staff, on this stuff.
Side in this call.
Yeah, I mean, it's stunning.
Yeah,
it really is stunning.
And it's also why we weren't able to get those $2,000 stimulus checks, because if Trump had been involved in the conversations from the beginning, if he had been making this known, if he had pressured McConnell and not used Mnuchin as his proxy the entire time and had pushed for this, then there would have been pressure on Republicans to do so. But he chose to instead focus on conspiracy theorizing and disputing the election solely. And so all it did was create momentary chaos and potentially set the Republicans back in the runoffs. And
let's hope. Here is, and like we say, the real point of holding Donald Trump to account for these things at this point, in my mind, is to hold to account those who have enabled him. And the Democrats have done a really, I'm sorry, horrible job at this for years. They did it with Paul Ryan, or they failed to do it with Paul Ryan. They failed to do it with Mitch McConnell in the lead up to the 2016 election. And we know, because of the WikiLeaks emails, we know that this was a source of controversy between the DNC and the Clinton campaign. The Clinton campaign wanted to protect Paul Ryan. They wanted to protect Paul Ryan, I suspect, because we can look to Chuck Schumer, who was bragging in October that they were going to have this infrastructure deal, October of 2016. I think the quote is something to the effect of, I've got Schumer, I've got Clinton, I've got Ryan, and we're going to do this repatriation of the taxes, the offshored federal taxes owed by corporations. That's going to come back in. That's their whole plan.
Really thinking long term.
Well, I mean, it was a calculation and a complete mistake, and completely devoid of any political sense or notion or understanding of who they're opposing in some ways, and maybe also a little bit of a sense of like, we're not necessarily in that much opposition.
Or a desire to improve lives of people, right? If you're not convinced that republicanism and conservatism is the ideology that needs to be defeated, then fine. If you can get along with the guy Paul Ryan, then that's all that matters to governing.
And they have failed to hold the enablers to account. Maybe we're going to see something better from that. I doubt it. We have just being reported right now by Erica Warner at the Washington Post, Hakeem Jeffries on a Georgia phone call. We're not looking backwards. We're looking forwards. You cannot look forwards and ignore how we got here. You can't do that. It is impossible. It is a failure. It is exactly what Barack Obama did. And I don't know how you can say this is anything but an abject failure as to where we are today. But here is one of his key enablers right after. I still remember that moment where he was so angry about Donald Trump slagging his wife. Here is Ted Cruz talking about being one of at least, I think it is 12 Republican senators who plan to vote and not certify the election results.
You're a constitutionalist. You wrote an entire book about it. What does the Constitution tell us about who decides who the president should be? What if the commission that you are explaining does form, comes back with actual evidence of fraud? Then what happens?
Well, then the results have to be set aside. If there's evidence of fraud and it's substantial and significant enough to affect the results in a particular state, then those election results would have to be set aside. And the states would then have to determine, all right, we have a valid claim here. The evidence supports it. We need to conduct elections consistent with the law. You know, the Constitution gives the responsibility of counting the ballots to the Vice President of the United States, Vice President Mike Pence, and to both houses of Congress. And the framers of the Constitution, when they assigned a task to the Congress, they knew what they were doing. You know, there's some folks who are saying this is purely a ministerial act. They just have to, count them and walk out and you have no judgment whatsoever. Well, that frankly doesn't make any sense. Why would the framers give to Congress something that could be given to a clerk? The reason they gave it to Congress is they understood there are difficult determinations about what counts as a valid vote. You know, following the 1876 election, 10 years later, in 1887, Congress passed a statute, the statute that we're operating under. It's called the Electoral Count Act. And what it provides is the mechanism for raising an objection. And it says you can raise an objection if the votes were not regularly made by lawfully certified electors. And so in this instance, if you have states that are violating the law, that are committing fraud, those votes are not being regularly made, and those are not lawfully certified electors. And so that Congress's responsibility is to address these claims. I understand.
Okay. Now, if is doing a lot of work there, because there is zero indication that that condition, the if this was unlawful, that threshold has even been closed. I mean, he has no evidence as to what he's talking about. It is complete. And here's the point. Everyone knows this is BS.
Yep.
Everyone knows it's BS. And the question is how much will the Democratic Party hold these people to account? Because you cannot rely on the media to do this. The media will just keep inviting people back on. We know this. We know this over and over again.
And the media fixates on Trump and never on the Republican Party. I mean, that was the whole issue with it. So that you have to take a more holistic approach when you're trying to hold these people to account, not just about how Trump is this awful aberration, which has been a lot of the sugar high of the last 4 years for much of the mainstream media.
And look, listen. I mean, the fact of the matter is, folks like Chuck Todd are getting a lot of grief right now because they keep inviting Ron Johnson back onto the show, even though the guy has shown himself to be completely a bad faith actor, completely making this stuff up as a shill.
11 Republican
One of the
senators
11, I think it's 12 now, Republican senators who are going to vote against the certification. But the fact is that you cannot expect the media to get out. I mean, let me put it this way. Based upon what we've seen of the media for years, I think in a perfect world, you could expect the media to do this, to make these assessments. But you cannot expect, knowing what we know about the media, and this is not a new phenomenon, this has been going on for at least 2 decades, and I limit it to that only because that's when I've been very, very attuned to it. You cannot expect the media to get out in front of the criticism that is leveled by the opposition party. They may do that for the Republicans, but they will not do that for the Democrats. They simply will not.
It shouldn't also be their job. I mean, I know that I have a million criticisms of the media, but the opposition party is supposed to make their case.
Exactly.
And then the media picks it up. And you know why? Partially why the media picks up the Republican critiques of the Democrats? Because they make their darn case every single time, the Republicans do. So where are the Democrats? You have to use your bully pulpit in order for whatever slim talking points they've come up with, which doesn't seem to be much of a strategy behind that either, for the media to pick it up. And there's never a strategy behind it. And it hasn't been for years. And this insistence of moving on and looking forward, not looking back. I'm sorry. There's no way to do this in real time. There's only the idea. We have people who have broken our laws. We have people who have broken our norms. We have people who are attacking some of the foundational aspects of our democracy. And if you use the analogy of a police officer saying you cannot look backwards, you can only look forwards. Or if you use the analogy of a prosecutor saying you cannot look backwards, you can only look forwards. I'm sorry. It doesn't work that way. Well, they certainly don't adapt that philosophy when it comes to poor people, when it comes to black people in this country, when it comes to people who have less power. But for the powerful, we never, ever want to look backwards. We only want to look forwards.
Let's do it with rent.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's not just Trump supporters who would let Trump stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone and get away with it. It's also the Democrats who refuse to hold him to account. They impeached him over Ukraine. I get it. But when it comes to substantive issues where he basically here is trying to extort, in the last story we talked about, the Georgia Secretary of State, Hakeem Jeffries says we're not looking backwards.
It's just absurd. It's just absurd. Speaking of those rent checks, here is there was an attempt by the Democrats, or I should say by some Democrats, to hold up the vote. The president had vetoed the defense authorization bill. That is why the members of the House had to come back the beginning of last week. During that time, they not only attempted with unanimous consent to pass the $2,000 checks, they ended up having suspending the process. They actually had a full-on vote, It was overwhelmingly in favor of the $2,000 checks. That sends it to the Senate. Mitch McConnell, of course, says, I'm not going to hold a vote on it. Bernie Sanders says, if you're not going to hold a vote on that, then I am going to attempt to filibuster the defense authorization veto override. And you will not get that vote until you give a vote on the $2,000 checks. Now, you needed all the Democrats unified around this. And Chuck Schumer claimed that he was. And there was a couple of other senators that were helping out. Chuck Schumer certainly paid lip service to it. However, when push came to shove, when the members of the Democratic caucus in the Senate could have obstructed the vote,
would have needed a 2/3 necessary to override. They needed 2/3 necessary to override Trump's veto and pass the NDAA, and the Democrats chose to.
Well, the real issue was in a procedural motion to move forward with the vote. Only Sanders, Markey, Merkley, Warren, Wyden, and Van Hollen voted against that. These are procedural motions that allowed pass one, then you move on to the next one that allows essentially for you to move through the process to get past the filibuster essentially that Bernie Sanders was offering, and you get to this vote. And Chuck Schumer tweeted a good game, but when push came to shove, he basically allowed the vote to go forward. Here is Mitch McConnell going on talking about why Democrats or why the idea of a $2,000 check was useless. Now, remember, this is the guy who marshaled in one of the largest tax cuts for wealthy people in this country in the history of at least in the past 10 years.
Checks. Only my friends, Speaker Pelosi and Democratic leader, could look at households in New York and California who make $300,000 in households where nobody has been laid off, where earnings did not even drop during the past year.
Pause it for one second.
Conclude.
Oh, incidentally, that's a lie.
Such a lie.
These checks, the $2,000 checks, you would only get money, and it would be reduced. You'd only get money up to making $115,000. And you would get $5 off for every $100 above $75,000. So
you only get that full $600 for the $75,000, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
$600, you only get some money up to $87,000. For $2,000, you'd only get some money up to $115,000. So you wouldn't even get the full $2,000 up to that point. Like I say, you would get $5 off for every 100 above $75,000. So the numbers he's throwing out there, of course, are just huge lies. But continue.
Earnings did not even drop during the past year. And conclude, these rich constituents of theirs need, quote, survival checks financed by taxpayer dollars and borrowed money. Everyone sees the game here. These are the same Democrats who proudly blocked the entire aid package for months because they tried to hold out for special tax cuts for rich people in blue states. Now they say it's a matter of survival to send another boatload of cash to people making $300,000, regardless of whether they've experienced any disruption at all this past year. Even the liberal Washington Post today is laughing at the political left for demanding more huge giveaways with no relationship to actual need. Here's what the Washington Post wrote. Especially wrong-headed is the progressive left, spearheaded by Senator Bernie Sanders, who depicts the $2,000 as aid to desperate Americans, despite huge amounts destined for perfectly comfortable families. That's from the editors of the Washington Post. The Wall Street Journal, usually their opposite number, actually agrees. These non-targeted checks are unnecessary, and struggling households can access targeted support like expanded jobless benefits, food stamps, child care subsidies, and much more. The liberal economist Larry Summers, President Clinton's Treasury Secretary and President Obama's NEC director, says, quote, "There's no good economic argument for universal $2,000 checks at this moment." He points out the CARES Act and the brand new law will already have boosted overall household income relative to the economy back to its pre-pandemic levels, if not higher. If specific struggling households need still more help after the huge historic package that was just signed into law 4 days ago has taken effect, then what they will need is smart, targeted aid, not another fire hose of borrowed money that encompasses other people who are doing just fine.
Billions of dollars in tax cuts to wealthy people who specifically did not need that money was no problem. Billions of dollars that were loaned, billions of dollars that were coming out of the government's budget, no problem. And it is incredibly unhelpful to have economists of the ilk of Larry Summers come out and say this. I mean, the idea that, look at it, put it this way. The analogy is this. We have a crap show when it comes to the vaccine dissemination in this country because we have no federal guidance whatsoever. We have people like Andrew Cuomo who have decided, and each state gets to decide how this gets distributed. There's a story in the Albany Times from about a week and a half ago. It starts like this. County officials who have for years been planning for a mass vaccination said they're seeing the training and preparation, much of it funded by millions of dollars in federal grants, pushed aside as the administration of Governor Andrew Cuomo has retained control of the state's coronavirus vaccination program. And he's including having hospitals rather than local health departments administer the doses. Well, we know why that's happening because the health industry, these hospitals, they give huge donations. So they're going to get a payday through this, whereas local places won't. There's no money there. The point being this, is that you can try and target the vaccinations down to the point where Andrew Cuomo has said, you're going to get fined $1 million if you give it to somebody who isn't at the top of the list. Or you can focus on getting the vaccinations out. Maybe there will be some people who get it and don't need it as desperately as somebody else does in terms of their risk assessment. But if you try and create an apparatus in a time of urgency or emergency that is going to have a 1-to-1 yield, you're going to end up causing far more pain and suffering than you would otherwise. So yes, there is no doubt that if you do $2,000 checks for everybody who are making who have income less than $75,000 in this country, you are going to be giving that money to people who don't need it, in quotations.
But rising tide lifts all boats in this case, and the fixation with means testing, like what you're talking about, it's this cult that even, many Democrats have ascribed to it, like you're talking about with Andrew Cuomo, where they're so focused on tailoring these specific programs so that it doesn't help one person who might not need it, then actually disseminating what is necessary to making people, be able to survive in this time. And then it doesn't help when you have Larry Summers come out there and Paul Krugman was debating
the necessity because they're very comfortable, and the idea that there could be some waste, and it is not the best targeted mechanism for it, but in the context of an emergency, in the context of urgency, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And it's not even a question necessarily of rising tide lifting all boats. The question is like, who would you be missing? In this instance, you are diminishing the amount of suffering. And I think the data shows that people who are making less than $75,000, their propensity to spend this money is far higher than when you look at these incredible tax cuts for wealthy people. That's the bottom line.
It goes right back into the economy because people need to spend that money. It's a way to stimulate the economy as well. And when you have guys like Krugman coming out there and Larry Summers to a lesser extent, who are taking a hatchet to the idea of $2,000 stimulus checks, you have to wonder what conversations they've had with people in the Biden administration, what conversations are happening there. I'm not saying
I think
it's some
this is
conspiracy.
just on brand for them. That's my sense.
But it's also like Biden wants something passed and he didn't want it to be sabotaged. They're so afraid that that package wasn't going to pass. Trump ended up signing it. Checks are going out as we speak, I guess. But there is this, I think, fear that the economic fallout is going to be so bad in the first part of the Biden administration that they wanted anything passed. They didn't care what was in it. And I think people like Krugman were doing the dirty work for him in some way.
All right, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with one final note. So lastly, Nancy Pelosi was elected to Speaker of the House again. There was, I think, ultimately 5 Democrats who voted against her. They are sort of so-called frontline Democrats who ultimately held out. Connor Lamb was one of them. There was Elise Slotkin, a couple others who are running in districts where I think they find being associated with Nancy Pelosi is highly problematic. There was in the sort of online left, I guess you could call it, a push by some people to get the progressives to hold out their vote in exchange for a vote on Medicare for all. That did not happen. However, apparently what was happening behind the scenes were that the progressives were negotiating and leveraging that vote to get a rollback on PAYGO quickly, because we only have a minute left here. PAYGO was something that Nancy Pelosi announced, I guess it was a year ago, that if they retook the House, that they would institute PAYGO rules, which essentially means any program, any new expenditures must be offset by cuts to other places or a raise in taxes, which essentially eliminates the ability to do anything progressive.
It's a mass poison pill for Medicare for all, Green New
everything,
Deal.
Everything. And when she announced this a year or so ago, it was a nightmare. She is a big acolyte of the late Pete Peterson, and who was Nixon's commerce secretary, and this idea of deficit fears and deficit hawks. It's absurd. We'll get into it more. However, it's part of a deal, apparently, to get progressive votes. There has been a loophole essentially asserted into the PAYGO rules, which is anything that has to do with, and I'll just read it here. Measures to prevent, prepare for, or respond to economic or public health consequences resulted from COVID-19 pandemic, which is just about anything, and measures to prevent, prepare for, or respond to economic, environmental, or public health consequences resulting from climate change.
So specifically Medicare for all, Green New Deal. There we go. Now we can have a vote on that. We couldn't do it before that concession.
You could have a vote. It just wouldn't be anything.
It wouldn't go anywhere. And
right.
You have to.
Well, you're going to lose it anyways. But, but that aside,
even worse.
We will talk more about this as the show progresses, and we will be back tomorrow. For those of you who are sticking around, we will talk more about that and more in the fun half of the program. Our number is 646-257-3920, 646-257-3920. We will take a quick break, head into the fun half. Just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. A lot of people dealing with some economic hardship these days. And, you know, we make it possible for people. We'll make deals with people because we don't want to cut anybody out, lock anybody out for lack of funds on this program. But if you're one of those people who are doing okay, 2021, New Year's resolution, support this program by becoming a member at jointhemajority.report.com. Don't forget, check out the No McKee Show. You can find it on youtube.com/the No McKee Show. She'll be back live tomorrow. Also, AM Quickie every morning, 6-7 minutes, headline news, AM Quickie. You can sign up for it at amquickie.com. Find it on your podcast server, all free, of course. And we got merch. And I saw a prototype of the beanie, and it's good.
It looks good.
It looks good and feels good. Very exciting. You can go to shop.majorityreportradio.com. Don't forget, check out the Antifada. Go to patreon.com/Antifada, or you can go to, there's Jamie right now.
Hey.
Tell us about it. Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year. May this year be even better than the last.
Let's hope.
It's hard to do.
Yeah. Well, we got off to a pretty good start this year, or I guess end to the last year at the Antifada. We had on Mike Davis, legendary Marxist historian, activist, urban theorist. He is so cool. He seems like he knows everything. He's written some really great books, and he's a communist. So as you can imagine, we had a very cool conversation with him, looking back at the year that was. A lot of the things that happened this year are things that Mike Davis has been predicting for like decades now, but he takes no pleasure in being right about any of it. I asked him that. Patreon.com/the Antifada. Check that out. Also, we're streaming on Twitch Wednesday evenings and Friday evenings now, and more TBA.
Great. 2 days a week. It's big.
Huge.
At least.
And Matt, what's happening on your end of the world? Oh, we did the one thing I did over break was to do a tribute show to Michael, specifically on his more comedic stuff, with David Feldman and Andy Kindler. That's what it was. And Matt was on there as well. That was fun, wasn't it, Matt?
It was a lot of fun, yeah. A lot of clips played. That's available now for patrons. But yeah, it was very gratifying, or not gratifying. I don't know, comforting. It was nice. It was nice to, go over all that stuff with you guys.
Okay. And what else is going on in your media empire?
Yeah, so David Griscom and I continued the Left Reckoning through the break. So we did a new episode last week, Wednesday. You can check that out. We're going to do another one on this week, Thursday. In the meantime, I don't know if I'm going to do it tonight or tomorrow, but I'm going to listen to this Trump audio in full on the Left Reckoning Twitch stream. So we'll probably do that tomorrow, I think. So twitch.tv/Left Reckoning. And there was a new episode of Literary Hangover out for both public and patrons. So check that out. Look forward to season 2. Wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
And for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
I am a total cunt.
Can we bring back DJ Dannerky's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
psych. Fuck them. Almost says what?
What?
Almost says what?
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
You see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy. We are back. It is the fun half, ladies and gentlemen. We will get to the whole force the vote stuff, but we're going to push that to the back of the show, to the back end of the show, just because
it's so extreme.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. In many respects, it's true. It really doesn't. And that's my it doesn't matter sound.
I agree with you. That's the computer. And that was my impression of the computer, you know?
But
just pulling out all the stops today.
Boop. I agree.
What does matter is we have a real crap show going on with these vaccination things. And this Cuomo thing, I want to make it really clear. Cuomo the other day signed or announced that he is signing, and I think he's going to do, I think he may have already done so by now, today. He is going to sign an extension of the eviction moratorium. He is also, he says 140,000 people have already received one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine in New York State. He has says that any provider that intentionally administers a vaccine to a person who is not eligible could face a $1 million penalty in the revocation of all state licenses. So here's what he's doing. Here's the little trick. Here's the little bait and switch. Because I read that article. This is from the Union Ledger, December 23rd. County officials who have for years been planning a mass vaccination said they have been seeing they are seeing that training and preparation, much of it funded by millions of dollars in federal grants, pushed aside as the administration of Governor Cuomo has retained control of the state's coronavirus vaccination program, including having hospitals rather than local health departments administer the doses. I mean, I hope this is obvious as to why that's happening, right? Oh, it's backing up there. But, I mean, I hope that's obvious. Here's one. Here's a little headline for you. After hospital's donation to New York Democrats, $140 million payout. Cuomo, who raised payments to hospitals at a time when Medicaid spending was already drastically over budget. That's why we had cuts in Medicaid. He raised payments to the doctors. Last month, Cuomo signed legislation shielding hospital and nursing homes from the threat of lawsuits stemming from the coronavirus outbreak. The provision inserted into the annual budget by Cuomo's aides created one of the nation's most explicit immunity protections for healthcare industry officials. And this is also a further payoff to the hospitals, because here's what you make. Here's what private industry makes if your local health department, which has been training, and then I will continue on, officials have privately said they could vaccinate the population of the southern half of the Albany County in a few days if they were given the coronavirus vaccines and allowed to mobilize their plans. Now, we don't have the vaccinations, but they have a plan to roll it out. Albany County has developed and submitted our mass vaccination and distribution strategy of the state. However, we're waiting to hear back. They would do this with mobile vaccination stations that they would build up. Now, do you know who would make money off of this? If off these vaccinations, aside from obviously the pharmaceutical companies that are going to pay for it, but they're going to make that money regardless because of our effed up situation in this country. But do you know who would make money if the cities and towns or the state, the county board of health departments had the ability to set up these, mobile vaccination stations?
Not the hospitals.
Nobody.
Yeah.
But
the guys who build the mobile vaccination stations.
I guess that's true. There would be those. There would be that big tent. I
was about
money.
to get into the mobile vaccination station business, but this really is a huge blow.
If Cuomo had friends who thought they could get into that business quickly enough, I can assure you that he would be doing something different.
Yeah.
But it is stunning. It is stunning how there's absolutely no reason to not make use of all that training and preparation that has already existed, except for the fact that it doesn't put money in certain people's pockets. I mean, this is just corruption. It's just full-on corruption.
I mean, and I don't even understand if you wanted to enrich your hospital donors, which, is par for the course with Cuomo, like at least sprinkle a little bit of distribution in New York State and local centers so that it could get out more quickly. But no, it has to be an exclusively hospital-oriented first rollout.
I imagine if they have more, I mean, now they don't have the number of vaccines, I think, where they could do that. I mean, it's just, I don't think it makes sense to do that in that sense, but it's not really too dissimilar to what the Trump administration did. All right. They're going to distribute these things in a way so that their buddies can make money off it.
No, he is Democrat Trump. We know this.
Well, from certain angles, it seems like a very myopic view of things, right? Because if the vaccine doesn't get out fast enough, the economic crisis is going to be worse. And that's going to be bad for at least, certain of the donors and certain sectors of capital. But on the other hand, there are plenty of sectors of capital that are recording record profits right now, including the real estate industry with which Cuomo is very cozy.
I mean, I don't know. It's not clear to me. I think if we start getting more vaccinations, that this is going to inhibit necessarily the release of the vaccinations. It's not clear, although it sounds to me like, what the plans for these, that the health departments could do it that much faster. I don't know if there's a big difference between a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, when we're talking about the limited number of vaccinations we have available to us now. And maybe as we get closer to getting, sort of mass vaccinations, they will roll this other thing out. The bottom line is it's just like, why are we, someone's going to pay for this. Someone's going to pay for the hospitals to distribute this vaccine. And there's undoubtedly going to be a profit for them. And you'd have to pay, obviously, the health departments to put out the vaccine, but there's no profit. There's no shareholders. There's no extra costs. There's nothing off the top. I mean,
and that's why it's so ironic where, Cuomo's saying, like, I'm going to penalize if the vaccine isn't distributed based on my phase instructions, right? As if he has some pure moral standing in the way that he's choosing to distribute the vaccines.
But that's why he does that, because he's
projecting or
it's like
deflecting.
Look it over here, everybody. And it's this hand that's the one that's actually doing all the work.
Yeah, and if you think that New York's ruling class is not going to find a way to jump the line regardless, I don't know what you're smoking.
Forget about it. Of course, every wealthy person in New York State who wants that vaccine is going to get it. They'll figure out.
And that holds true for every state, I would imagine.
Of course.
It's hard to imagine it not happening that way.
Without a doubt. And, I don't know. It's like I saw some report that, you're hearing stories of like concierge doctors in California, $5,000 I can get you something. So there you go. Meanwhile,
that's freedom.
The extradition attempt on Julian Assange in Britain has failed by the United States. It was interesting. The judge had shot down, the British judge, and had shot down a lot of the arguments that that Assange's lawyer had made in the past. But apparently, the one that she found the most compelling was Assange's health. According to The Guardian, sending him to the U.S. would not breach a bar on extradition for political offenses, she said. She had no reason to doubt that the U.S. constitutional and procedural protections would be applied to a trial he might face in the U.S. However, she found compelling evidence from medical experts, including details on how Assange had suffered from depression while in prison in London. The overall impression in depressed and sometimes despairing man who was genuinely depressed about his future. And I think really it came down to the treatment that the U.S. gave to Chelsea Manning, putting her into isolation, that the Brits find this to be torturous.
Well, it is.
And it is.
Yeah. Like, think about that, though, for a second. Or are you done? I didn't mean to cut you
Well,
off.
I mean, ultimately, they said that they would be afraid that the conditions of isolation in a so-called supermax prison in the U.S. and procedures described by U.S. authorities would not prevent him from potentially finding a way to take his own life. And it's basically a way of saying you guys are barbaric in the way that you treat your prisoners.
I thought this was pleasantly good news. I completely agree with the judge's ruling here in the sense that the United States participates in torture not just by international law, but by really its own definition of it in many ways, historically. And solitary confinement, which can be used for a range of different offenses in prison, having magazines as one of them, is legitimate torture, especially if people have struggled with mental health. And can you imagine if someone brought a depression, mental health argument to a U.S. judge? I mean, most of them would laugh in their face. Like, oh,
right.
Please, are you kidding me? It's toughen up. We're so behind the times when it comes to this. So this is really good news. And I know that Assange seems like just a really not fun guy to be around and probably not a good person. But when it comes to the precedent that it sets, hopefully this is a good thing. And the Mexican president has, I think, offered him asylum as well. The charges related, I mean, there's a whole set of different charges, and it's unclear to me that much of this comes from the 2016, not 2016, that the charges do come from have to do with 2016 than they do actually anything earlier with the WikiLeaks stuff from Chelsea Manning. But I can tell you, like, the journalistic value of the stuff in the first tranche of WikiLeaks in terms of what Chelsea Manning sent to them. I remember having this debate when I used to go on Dylan Ratigan's show back in 2011. Literally, people would say, like, it's unclear what the news value is. And I'm like, today, 3 of our stories that we're talking about are from those leaks. Like, I mean, it was, people never realized how much of the news was dominated for like 2 years from stories that came out of these leaks, internationally too, not just in this country, but totally around the world. So the news value of that stuff was, I think, indisputable. And I think there is some questions, and I'm not sure in the context of, I think in 2016 is to like how involved they were in securing this information as opposed to just publishing it. And the line gets crossed when you start to actively encourage people to go and steal information as opposed to just saying, here's a lockbox, digital one. If you have stuff, we'll take it. And I don't know if that'll ever be adjudicated. Falls on the publisher. I mean,
well, it's no. It doesn't fall on the publisher if you just say, you send me stuff and I will present it. It falls on the publisher if I say, hey, here's how you get that stuff. You go in, you do this keyword search, and then you're actually involved. I mean, that is where the line stops, right? I mean, because I think, like, in my mind, WikiLeaks, for better or for worse, is a publication. I mean, what they do is, in many respects, akin to what other journalistic outfits do. Where they cross the line, I'm not saying that they do, but where the line is crossed, I should say, and I don't think it's been established that they did this, but where the line is crossed is where you, as a publishing outfit, instead say to potential sources, here's how you go about stealing that information, or here's how you go about securing that information. You're not supposed to do that. That is then you're starting to get into a legal territory. I mean,
but the prosecution of that sets it down such a terrible precedent where the discretion is, like, the government can manipulate or throw the hammer down on somebody by saying, oh, you encouraged your source to do this, to find it, and it was. Well,
you need
illegal.
Evidence to do that. I mean, look, well, let's put it this way. It's like, is it okay for...
The U.S. government often doesn't need that strong of evidence to use really intense...
But as a principle, right? As a principle, at what point do you become the publisher of leaked or stolen information? At what point do you become the leaker or the stealer of information? And I think when you cross that line, you don't have the same protections as you have if you're just a publisher. I don't think that I can go in and steal your emails, Emma, because I'm going to talk about them on the show. And let's assume that there's some news value to it. Like, I'm not allowed to go and steal your emails and break into your email account. I'm not protected.
But I'm not a government agency, or I'm not a whistleblower, right? I mean, I know we're talking more general terms than, the.
But now you're talking
emails.
about the news value of it.
Yeah, and I think that that's important when we're talking about First Amendment protections, which is what we're dealing with Assange.
I am of the mind that your protections, and when you stop functioning as a publisher and you start functioning as a stealer of information. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't go out and steal that information. I'm just saying you're subject to risk, right? Like, because what if you go in and steal a bunch of stuff and maybe it turns out to be not newsworthy? Are you still protected? Like, where is the limiting principle as to what a newspaper can do? Can the New York Times go in and steal information? I mean, is it just, if it's okay if it's just the government? What if it's not the government? What if it's the
Pentagon Papers were stolen information.
Exactly. And Ellsberg was the stealer, and he was, the question was Ellsberg a whistleblower or not? But the Times were protected because the Times did not tell Ellsberg to go do it. The Times didn't help Ellsberg to do it. All they did is publish it. They received it from him. He didn't. It's the difference between, like, being,
I get it. It's also just decades ago, when now we're having online communications where someone can communicate directly with WikiLeaks or Assange, and they can have a back and forth, and potentially they could steer them in the right direction of what they want to publish and stuff. So the lines are blurry, and I think it behooves us on left media, or it's important for us to side traditionally with, let's make the criminality of this kind of publishing as infrequent as possible, and make the principle strong.
I agree with that as well. But I think the way that you protect that publishing is you make sure that the publishers function as publishers. For instance, like, I think Chelsea Manning, she is a whistleblower, and the information that she released was did not in any way hurt national security. It was information the American public deserved. I believe that her
and look at how they abused her.
And I agree. Yeah. I think that she was tortured. She was in isolation and whatnot. But she has a role to play in this. And then WikiLeaks had a role to play in it. And the role that WikiLeaks played, at least in the context of Chelsea Manning, was simply to publish it. They received it, they published it. And I think that they should be able to do that. I think it's desperately needed that the press is able to do that. The contention was, and I don't think is in the context of the Chelsea Manning thing, that the government was alleging that they participated in the theft of these things. And I think that how that's defined obviously is important. It should be defined in the most limited fashion possible. But I think to protect publishers, you need to stick to publishing. I mean, that's basically it in my mind. But
well, I think a bottom line here is that literally nobody trusts the American justice system to adjudicate these questions in any kind of fair and just way.
I mean, I think it's a separate question, but I think that's also the case.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're having that's a more theoretical conversation than Sam, because I just don't trust that the government is going to stick to the exact line between, oh, this publisher crossed this specific legal line. We already saw what they did with Chelsea Manning, what they plan to do to Edward Snowden.
No, I agree.
It's just, they're going to bring the hammer no matter what.
It's a little bit different, but like, look at how Gawker got just executed because they published a sex tape with news value, allegedly. And like, people don't really like to defend Gawker because that was obviously a trashy thing to do. But like, I think we got to err on the side of defending freedom of the press and free speech whenever we can in these kinds of scenarios, because the default is that whoever has the most money wins.
Right. Well, that was a completely different. I mean, that wasn't the government. That was Peter Thiel, basically.
No, I know.
Went in and using his money to shut them down.
But like I'm saying, the default is in any of these cases, whoever has the most money and the most power wins, whether that is the government or an evil billionaire.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 678 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Matthew from Atlanta.
Matthew from Atlanta. What's happening? Who's going to win tomorrow?
I'm telling you, man, I have a good feeling about this. I live in actually Lucy McBass district that Ossoff ran in a few years ago.
Okay.
And there is a giant swell of Latinx activists out here. And I have a really good feeling. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but I think it's going to work out all right on both ends.
All right.
Real quick, I'd be remiss if I didn't just say how much, Michael meant to all of us and what an inspiration he was. I just want to start with that. But I had a question, a comment and a question. My comment being, personally, with this whole Medicare floor vote situation, I think, has there been any talk about the emergency temporary expansion of Medicare just for X amount of months to get us through the pandemic? Because I feel like David Sirota said about Ro Khanna's proposed bill to leave it to the states, if you did a temporary expansion of Medicare just through the virus, that would give the American public a taste of what they're going to get, and therefore there would be an immense amount of pressure once it comes time to renew or even have a floor vote on permanent Medicare for all.
I believe the scientific term for that is just the tip.
I understand, but if we're talking tactical, I just wondered if that would be, something that we could look at. But really, more importantly, what I wanted to talk about was I am now a union store steward at Kroger Company for the UFCW Local 1996, and something that we are talking
Charge.
about. What's up?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, no, and you guys definitely were part of inspiring me to do that. But
good.
Something that we're really focusing on right now is the PRO Act. And I just want to know if you guys had plans to maybe talk more about the PRO Act, push for it. It's very similar to card check. And it would definitely be the biggest piece of labor legislation in decades.
Yeah. And that passed the House at the beginning of this
February.
year. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. February.
And that is a big deal. if Ossoff and Warnock get in there, it really just all the power goes to Joe Manchin, and that guy I think is pretty. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happens in the Senate, but yes, that would be huge. We need. I mean, I think there's a better understanding. There was a huge missed opportunity when card check was not passed when the Democrats
had super majority and everything.
Yeah, and I think they wanted to save. They wanted to save. I guess a political cachet for the Affordable Care Act and whatnot, but. And the PRO Act is basically allows for more like a unionization across shops, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
I believe it's the People's Right to Organize Act, and it would make it just much easier for non-unionized workplaces to be able to do so. And obviously, that's a huge deal. And I think it's something that for the next, few months, if everything goes well tomorrow, I think that would be one of the biggest fights we can push. Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I, as far as the first thing about the temporary expansion of Medicare, like the HEROES Act, basically, it seems to me, shut the door on that in the sense that, and this is, I talked to AOC about it. You can go back and listen to a conversation we had. We just played it for the best of last week. This was one of the worst parts of the HEROES Act was they were going to subsidize COBRA instead of expanding Medicare.
Well, God forbid people should get a taste of socialized medicine and decide that they like it. I guess the more PC way to say that might be foot in the door.
Well, no, exactly. But,
hey,
that's the point.
But guys, I mean, that's exactly how, Medicare got passed in Canada is, like Sirota has said with Ro Khanna's bill, you let states implement it, and just like legalizing marijuana at the state level, now everybody's doing it.
Yeah, the problem is, and I look, and I think my understanding is that the unions are looking to the states to do this, right? I mean, they are looking to
we are, yes, sir.
The problem is, and I would say, is that in those instances, it is hard for them to have the money that is necessary for that type of thing. Now, you can make it like a sort of a less comprehensive version of like a Medicare for all. I mean, look, the ACA had a waiver in it that allowed for states to do that. Vermont was toying with the idea. And then you had a weak governor who was afraid of the idea of raising the taxes, and it fell apart there. I also think that was a different era, and there's a better understanding. And, you could have some major Democratic figures like Bernie Sanders come in or AOC come in and build support in a specific state that's trying to do it. So, if that happens in California, Gavin Newsom's our president, right? I mean, I don't know when that happens, but that's the way that Gavin Newsom, if I'm Gavin Newsom, I'm thinking like, this is the way I become president.
President named Gavin.
Yeah. Well, we're in a completely different time than we were.
No, I agree.
Just even a few months ago.
I agree. So, I think that's
hey, thanks,
good.
Guys. I really appreciate it. I'm
it.
going to hang out and listen to you guys. I appreciate everything you guys do.
Thanks so much.
Solidarity.
What about the fear that single payer healthcare really only works on the federal level, and if states try and for whatever reason fail to implement it at the state level, that will undermine the case for it? I'm not saying that this is a reason states shouldn't do it, but like I have heard that bandied about by people who are wonks on this issue.
I don't think there's any reason why in a state like California, let's say, or a state like New York, single payer healthcare couldn't work. The only difficulty is that you have a dynamic in states. Like, I mean, look at this, the dynamic that we see with charters in New York in particular, charters, and with just this vaccination program. The money in the state buys a lot more politicians than it does on a federal level. And so it may be harder to implement insofar as you need to raise taxes substantially to do it. I mean, it's basically just a question of like, California is a very big state. And
well, what about, I oddly, I was watching the documentary Weiner over the weekend. Anthony,
love that documentary.
I've seen it before. I was showing my boyfriend who hadn't seen it before, and I totally forgot he ran on single payer for the city.
Yeah,
that could be some way to do some sort of micro and then expansion. Like, doesn't need to be the whole of New York State, but.
Right. I mean, I think California is really, if you can do it in California, then there's no reason why it can't happen nationally. But,
right.
I went to see that movie with my boss and my male coworker, two dudes, and I was like just cackling like a witch the whole time at this man's humiliation. And they were both so uncomfortable. It was great.
Well, I was sad. I mean, you just feel sad for the family, but I'm a real softie.
I felt surprisingly bad for Huma, I will say. I did not expect to have any empathy for her.
It's a good movie, good documentary if anyone wants to watch a politics one.
Tomorrow, there's a good chance I'm going to hop on tomorrow night to cover the Georgia elections. Meanwhile, there's a real concern about what happens in Georgia because of this whole mystery thing about mail-in ballots. Now, they can work in places, I think it's Oregon's all mail-in ballots, right? Or is it Washington State? Who has all in mail-in?
I don't remember.
But there's multiple places around the country where they have mail-in ballots. But once you get east, there's something that takes over, and it becomes very mysterious and dangerous. And here's Ainsley Earhart to explain to us why people are so worried about these mail-in ballots.
Here's the question that a lot of people are asking. If there is a question about the votes, and if they think that it was rigged, and many people do believe that, then we need investigations, and we need to know that our votes count, that the votes were legal, and we need to find out where the problems are so we can make sure this doesn't happen in the future. Because if these Democrats, if they win Georgia, people fear that from here on out, they're going to be mail-in votes, which we don't trust now because the president doesn't trust it. And we all have heard these stories of people getting 4 ballots and 2 of them were dead people. And so you have to have trust and integrity in the system. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. We should all want that. And with so many people questioning what's happening, an investigation, many of these Republicans just want it investigated.
Well, part of it, Ainsley, is the fact that the president has been talking about how it's rigged, and he's got, my lawyers tell me this, but we just haven't seen the evidence to suggest that at this point.
A lot of Republicans don't think we ever will. We ever will see the evidence because we can't prove a lot of these signatures. They changed the rules at the last minute in Pennsylvania. They changed the rules in Georgia because of COVID. And because of COVID, people didn't want to go to the polls.
That's right.
I understand that. But it changed everything.
Right, and COVID is still out there today, and that's one of the things that the senators and the congressmen are looking at on the Republican side, who are going to object to the certification on Wednesday, is they would like to reform the election system so that what happened in November, if there was fraud, never happens again.
Ducey knows. I mean, come on. Like, his minimal pushback is so old at this point. He's trying to be the voice of reason. But he'll just say, well, we don't have evidence. And she goes, but the president, he feels that he was I was
going to say, I got the feeling that Ducey is like the guy, like the front office is like, Ducey, listen, you gotta rein them in.
Yeah.
And
but he can't fully go there. He can only do 5% of the reining in because he can't alienate the audience. But again, my favorite part was when she said,
but the president is suspicious.
So there you go. So that must mean that the claims have some legitimacy, in fact, are completely legitimate. That's where we take our cues from our coverage.
Of course. It's Oregon, Washington, both have all mail-in ballots. That's why. And Utah, Hawaii, and Colorado. Interesting. All west of the Mississippi. And what happens when you move east? Things get a little bit mysterious. You can't have mail-in ballots.
Trying to think about the connection between the Mississippi, the Western expansion, and voter fraud. I don't know. Can you tie those things together, Sam?
No.
But you can. You can.
No, I cannot.
Which means that their claims are legitimate because you can't provide evidence that their claims are not legitimate.
There you go.
That's the logic that they're working
The lack
with.
of evidence is proof that there's evidence.
Exactly.
For people often say like, oh, so-and-so gets talking points and, oh, we got to and well, here I would submit to you that there are talking points that Fox News gets. When you're concerned about all of the rabble-rousing that's happening by, let's say, a certain politician, one should probably have a vague notion of who that politician is. Here is Brian Kilmeade. He's very worried about what Cori Bush is doing.
But Cori Bush is somebody who is making a lot of noise for himself, not only calling capitalism a form of slavery, but saying, I am a proud member of the squad, which is now increasing in size. But many people say, don't be deceived. They are not increasing in power.
I think by definition, the more members you have as a part of the squad, you're increasing
That's
in
true,
power.
but did you catch the part where he is making a lot of noise for himself, this Cori?
Yeah.
The only problem with that, of course, is that Cori Bush is not a man. Cori Bush is a woman.
Fox keeps doing this. Sean Hannity didn't know who Cori Bush was, and Karl Rove was his guest.
It's such a missed opportunity, too, for them,
man.
because
She's
they
black,
love
which is
to
scary.
attack. Yes, they love to attack women of color, and they're leaving that on the table. I guess this is maybe sort of the way that they roll it out to their. I'm quite convinced that they're looking at Jamal Bowman, and they think that Jamal Bowman is Cori Bush.
Yes, that's exactly it. And they also are, it goes to show how sick the fixation on AOC is because they fixated her. Yes, she was the first out of the gates, right? But there's also this weird latent attraction to her from a lot of the right wing. So they don't really they've picked on her for the most part, and also Ilhan Omar because she's Muslim and they don't really care about the rest of the progressive lawmakers because they aren't making her this kind of weird sexual object.
It's
for their
weird
audience.
that it is. There's also, they know it's a ratings driver for them to attack women of color, and you do not hear. There's a reason why AOC has a higher name recognition amongst conservatives than she does with any other cohort, including the left or liberals or whatever.
Yeah, but they've all got huge, confusing voters for her.
And but
you said it
it's
more
also
eloquently than I.
But it's also they could demonize Katie Porter. She is now in leadership of the Congressional Caucus. But it doesn't fit into their narrative of attacking young women of color. That's just it.
Well, you can disrespect someone by misgendering them. You can disrespect someone with misogyny. You can go all kinds of routes with this. But it does seem like they're not really mining this for all its potential.
Yeah, at the center of the Black Lives Matter movement. Scary, very scary.
She wants to defund not just the police, but the military.
Well, that's according to Kelly Loeffler, that's what she was saying that Raphael Warnock wants to do. Also a black person. It's just the racism in it. It's just so obvious. Fox News really missing an opportunity here to get on board with the Georgia messaging, going after Cori Bush by potentially first recognizing who she is and figuring that part out.
Yeah. No, Cori Bush did tweet about it. We need to reduce military spending. What a concept. They're leaving money on the table, is what I'm saying.
Exactly. But, maybe we shouldn't alert them to it yet because I don't want her mentions to look like Ilhan Omar or AOC's.
Oh my God.
Matter of time. It's just a matter of time. All right. Let's this is a sad note. Here is news about Larry King. Let's put this up. Larry King is hospitalized with COVID. This is from yesterday, 2 days ago. I'm sorry, right? Was this from 2 days ago? January 2nd. And if you go back, usually what the lag time before you get into a hospital, you catch COVID, usually it's about 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. If you go back 2 to 3 weeks from today, you're around the 20th, 21st of December. Let's look in and see what Larry King's number one fan was doing on those very days. He was down in Florida at a Talking Points USA or Turning Points USA conference.
But doubles as a Talking Points USA
Exactly.
conference.
Telling a bunch of unmasked kids, college students presumably, crammed into an amphitheater, that they were part of the greatest protest ever because they were spreading COVID.
Holy shit, are you real people? Are you guys real people? Look at this, a room full of real people.
Oh.
In 2020, this is absolutely incredible. You guys are doing the greatest protest in American history right this second.
And literally, and he sounds a little slurry too, doesn't he? But and probably sometime within like 36 hours, his hero was catching COVID and is now in the hospital. Good luck to Larry King. I don't think that his being appreciated by Dave Rubin is reason to wish him ill in any way.
No, I mean,
but it is sort of like the idea that Dave Rubin, walks through this, and promotes the idea that you are involved in the greatest protest in the history of the one-day protest of the history of the country by essentially going out and daring a virus to not spread is just bat crap insane.
Well, obviously, I mean, it's no civil rights movement. It's no Edmund Pettus Bridge march. I think the Turning Point USA Christmas party, that takes the cake. Top protest in the country.
And Dave Rubin wise, we should remember the time that Larry King took a call with his son on the air on Dave Rubin's show and just talked to him for like at least 5 minutes, and Dave was trying to say, like, we're live. So needless to say, the respect does not go both ways.
Yeah.
Completely cocked.
Larry's a legend in his own right, and like, we shall not sully the name of Larry David by associating him with Rubin. Like, more than Rubin. Rubin clearly wants to be associated with Larry. Larry, I think, is, ambivalent.
Want to just also touch on this. This is sort of interesting. It's very interesting in my mind. Google has like 250,000, over 250,000 employees, full-time employees and contractors, my understanding. To tell a story about 250 Google employees maybe is not necessarily that big of a deal, although it's fascinating, and it could be an interesting model. New York Times reports that more than 225 Google engineers and other workers at Google have formed a union. Now, it sounds like it's not. It is part of the I think they're getting to attempt to get chartered by the CWA, that's Communication Workers of America. They call themselves the Alphabet Workers Union. It is a minority union that obviously does not represent the vast majority of workers at Alphabet, which is the owner of Google, or I think that's their corporate name. But it is basically, according to them, to give structure and longevity to activism at Google rather than negotiate for a contract. Now, who knows ultimately what will happen, but it is increasing worker power within the union, and it is the beginning of organizing in that whole tech world. And we just heard about the PRO Act. I mean, if the Democrats have an ounce of brains in their head, or they have an ounce of impetus in their head to maintain and hold power, which I think is really questionable, they will build the power of unions. They will provide. I mean, obviously, the key for unions is organizing, but there are things that can be done on a structural basis, on a statutory basis, that can make it much easier to organize, that can level the playing field of some sorts, at least in the context of trying to unionize, and also in the context of negotiations. It really is important who's in the National Labor Relations Board. It really is important if you have the ability to have card check or the PRO Act. These are very helpful. I guess enablers to building labor's power, and I think it's going to come in a much different, different fashions. But this has got to be this is part of it. I mean, it's encouraging.
Call me skeptical about Democrats embracing tech employees unionizing at Silicon Valley companies when the donation flow between Democratic politicians and Silicon Valley giants is
rather large.
It's a daily, if you will. And this is just why we need new leadership. Obviously, there was no viable person who was running against Pelosi that would have been better in any sense. But this old guard of Democratic leadership just continues to capitulate to the old Reaganomics and notions. They're afraid to embrace unionization. And like Biden likes to think of himself as this union guy without really doing anything about it. Just kind of the cadence of a regular Joe. That's not enough. There has to be encouragement of organizing around the country.
No, well, it's a little bit like which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Because unions' power decreased for a lot of different reasons, starting in the 1970s. And as unions became weaker, they became less of a base of power that the Democratic Party could rely on. The Democratic Party abandoned organized labor in turn, and it created sort of a negative feedback loop to that effect. But, nothing's going to change if we don't start building these institutions up again. The problem is a lot of these Democrats, came up in a generation and exist in an economic climate where the power of labor must be weakened and the power of bosses, it's a neoliberal, it's a dynamic economy, right? We're seeing it in France too, with Macron trying to take away worker protections on the grounds that companies need to be nimble to compete in the economy of today. And the only solution to that, like we said, is organizing.
Yep. Let's go to the IMs. Rabbit from Boston. Hey, Sam and MR crew, there's a discourse coming from the Force the Vote people that we need a Tea Party for the left. Although I agree the left needs militant institutional representation, this is an analogy that simply doesn't work. The Tea Party was astroturfed with bottomless pits of money and were friendly to the interests of capital. They could literally afford to fail as much as possible without consequence, and their pressure was successful because of the sheer amount of money backing them up. The left has a different battle to wage, and it begins with grassroots challenging the interests of capital. I'm just tired of hearing this analogy, and I think it gives people the wrong idea of how the left can attain power. Well, I don't think it's necessarily either or. I mean, I think we need to build the power of labor. But I do think that there is what was the Tea Party, really? The Tea Party was institutional support for challenging Republican establishment. And to some extent, we have that. It's not as big as we want it to be, but we can see some growth in it. And that is like Justice Democrats and those groups that organized around challenging people like Elliot Engel. You see that in Cori Bush's victory. You see it with Jamal Bowman. You see it with Mondaire Jones to some degree. He wasn't specifically a Justice Democrat. But I mean, it's nascent, but I think that's it sort of depends on how you define the Tea Party, what it was. But in my mind, what it was is they knocked off, they disciplined their party by knocking off Cantor, by knocking off some, Republican senators who were challenged from their right, I guess. And so I don't know that we're at a point of challenging a senator yet, but but I think we're starting to see this, right? I mean, we saw it with Lipinski to some extent, not necessarily as left, but I mean, that is, the idea is challenging and primarying. That is what the Tea Party did functionally. I mean, we had a version of that where you had, when Bernie Sanders was promoting people to show up at town halls to fight against the ACA. I mean, that's what fight against the repeal of the ACA. People forgot that, but that shortly happened right after the election in 2016, and that was very effective. I don't know what else the Tea Party is but for that. But yes, I agree. We have some institutional structure, and it is, it's unions really. And the question is, how do you build that up? And I don't think it's either or.
I can see where the IMer is coming from. Like it's weird to compare what we're doing on the left with the grassroots movement, with small donors, to something that was rather astroturfed and funded by big money interests and not fundamentally oppositional to the Republican Party in any way, right? It was rich people who didn't want to pay taxes. Whereas with this, there really is a divide in between, what the Democratic Party says it's doing, which is representing the interests of working people, and what they actually have to do first, which is represent their donors.
I mean, that's exactly right. I think the IMer's framing is correct in the fact that there was a huge amount of money from big donors that went to the Tea Party for the appearance of grassroots. The progressive wing, it's actually grassroots. And there was nothing really fundamentally different between the Tea Party and the rest of the Republicans, except for how the Tea Party branded themselves. So there was not really any opposition. Like the corporate donors were like, oh, this is just transactional, and if this Tea Party person comes in for this Republican, who cares? There wasn't an actual, like, the progressives, the squad face it from the Democratic establishment and then the entire Republican Party, and now apparently some section of the online left. That's not what the Tea Party got. They got open arms by many Republicans.
Right. I mean, I think I always viewed the Tea Party, and frankly, even we saw this a little bit with Trump too, which is like, it's Coke and Pepsi, but same industry, and they're just slightly different brands. But in terms of what they did to turn it from Coke to Pepsi, or whatever,
it's like Coke Zero and Coke. That's more what it is.
Well, whatever they did to turn it to Coke Zero, right, where they made themselves irrelevant, was they primaried. That's what they did. They primaried.
Well, if that's your only rubric for an analogy, then yes, it holds.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. There's just not the funding mechanism, and it's not the same. And there's, everything emanates from that as different. I mean, that's why there was stuff like back during the Tea Party, there were people who were doing like, it's the coffee party. And it's like, wait, what? I mean, there was a lot of attempts to sort of emulate it, but it really was fundamentally.
Yeah, I remember the coffee Facebook groups.
Oh yeah,
just have coffee with somebody like.
Very freedom fries of them.
Tim Pulitzer, Candace Owens famously sued her local education board for not protecting her against acts of racism as a teenager. But what the lamestream media won't tell you is that the students who bullied her went on to become huge fans of her work and now consider her. This is fascinating. And if people have had this experience, send us an email, Majority Reporters, and let me know. My sister said she was watching the show on YouTube, and there was an ad for Candace Owens, and she didn't skip the ad. It came in the middle of the show, and the ad ended up being 90 minutes long. It was an entire episode of Candace Owens' program that they advertised, like when we do the ads, I don't know, how our optimizers do it, but sometimes they allow ads in longer shows to pop in the middle. So at any point you can have a random ad, and presumably I've always assumed like, oh, they're 30-second ads or whatever. I have no idea. And because I always hit skip. Not saying you should, but you can, obviously. So I hit skip. And apparently my sister was just like curious to see how long the thing would go on. It was the entire show. Like, how much money do you have that you can back that up, right? Like these shows on the right, I'm sorry. It's just like, we can talk about where people get their money and this and that on the left, but the money on the right is just so extraordinary,
unbelievable, that
the idea that you could pay for a 90-minute ad in the middle of somebody else's show, that's nuts.
And that's one way to own the libs, I guess. Just pay to put your show in the middle of their show.
I'm sorry, but that's brilliant too, particularly with Candace Owens, because if you don't know anything about her, right? And you're watching the Majority Report or something like that, like you may be interested to see where she's coming from. It may take a little while. Like all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, what are you talking about?
Two can play at that game, right?
That's what I'm thinking. Like that was the first thing I said to my sister.
Yeah. I mean, I think we should come out against skipping because I think we don't want to be pro-censorship in this. So you got to watch the full 90 minutes.
All right, let's go back to the phones. Calling from a 215 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, Sam. This is Ani, formerly Ani from Oregon, now Ani from Maryland. Can you hear me okay?
Ani, now from Maryland. Happy New Year. What's on your mind?
Happy New Year. I have been busy working a lot. I use she, her pronouns, by the way. And I haven't gotten to watch the show as much as I used to. And I'm wondering if y'all did any coverage of the Bell v. Tavistock court case in the UK that was passed on December 1st about trans kids.
No, in the UK?
Yeah.
No. What was I never even heard of it.
I'm like cringing because I think of there as being Turf Island. But tell us about it.
Yeah, totally. It is. I mean, ironic because they were like, oh, wow, isolation for Chelsea Manning. That's crazy. Anyways, effectively, they've decided to, the High Court of the Queen's Bench has decided to limit or mandate best interest cases for kids under the age of 16. All trans kids under the age of 16 must now in the UK have best interests appeals made to the court system, which are normally issued for, say, like custody and divorce, like the best interests will be determined and helped decided by the court. But these are kids who, one, have waited like 2 to 3 years just to be referred to the endocrinologist. Two, their parents must consent. The Tavistock Trust of the NHS does not let kids who do not have supportive consenting parents be referred to endocrinology. Three, in that 2 to 3 years, have had a consistent sense of themselves. Obviously, they've decided when they're kids, they've got to wait all this time. There are 2 assessment processes for their competency to consent. One assessment process is done through the GIDS, the Gender Identity Something Service of the NHS. The other assessment is done through the trusts themselves, which are the endocrinology clinics. So the court is effectively saying, in their judgment, they say, we find it extremely doubtful that a 14 or a 15-year-old would be able to consent to these treatments, namely puberty blockers, not actually CSH, which is what they call HRT in the UK. CSH is cross-sex hormones. We call it hormone replacement therapy over here in the States. And so the court has said the implications for the puberty blockers should be considered in tandem with the CSH, given that so many of the people who go onto the puberty blockers, or so many people who go onto the CSH/HRT can, like it's a 98% rate of people who start puberty blockers and then go on to hormones. And that's probably because they waited 3 years. I mean, it's probably because they have a consistent sense of themselves, their parents support it, and they are trans. Every now and then you get somebody who detransitions, which is the plaintiff or the claimant, is UK term, for this case was a detransitioner. In the United States, a survey is done every 5 years. It's like 27,000 plus trans people are surveyed. Last one was published in 2015. The current one is postponed because of COVID. And basically it found that of over 27,000 trans people, only, I believe, 0.8% detransition, or less than 0.8%, a very small percentage of people detransition because it's not right for them. 8% of the respondents say they detransition, but the vast majority of the people who detransition is because of bullying pressure, family pressures, work pressures, etc. And they couldn't take it. Over half of the people who detransition actually retransitioning. So it's an extremely small minority.
So, and
yeah, especially when you hold that up to the number of transgender kids who kill themselves every year because they are not accepted or given access to these treatments.
Yeah. There's plenty of scientific study on that. It's interesting that the data around the actual detransitioning didn't really come up. I've read the entire court case. I'm writing a whole essay on it, 38 pages. I might make a YouTube video. We'll see. And it never comes up. The figures on detransitioning, even though ostensibly, yeah.
Let me just ask you one question to go back. Just when you say and I can't remember the term that was used, the best interests, is that that's the court appointing some presumably social worker to come in and theoretically have the opportunity to overrule not only the kids but the parents too?
Yeah. I don't know the mechanic. I don't know if it's a social worker. I don't know if it's
the court appoints some type of psychiatrist that comes in and assesses.
But there's already psychiatric evaluations, 6 months of which happen at GIDS, and then there's a second assessment that takes place at the trust. So I really don't understand the mechanism. It took effect December 22nd. I haven't seen any news articles that have relayed the details of any of the best interest cases.
What is it in this country? Yet. In this country, is there? Yeah. What is the? Is there what is this? Is it from state to state? Is it a different set of?
Yeah. I have a lot to learn, admittedly, about this country because it's very complex, and with our private insurance network, it's just extremely complicated. But yeah, state to state, there are differences, and like the FDA, I don't believe has like approved any like puberty blockers or even necessarily HRT, and so it's not really like, my understanding is that essentially there is a consensus in the medical community and they just basically act on this consensus, which, there's so much evidence to support, HRT being beneficial to trans people. I do want to highlight, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight some points about the case. There are a lot of dog whistles in the case that have no bearing on the final ruling, zero consequence. But they come up as the judges are evaluating, the data and what they're interested in about transness. These dog whistles come up that many of them actually were published, will be very familiar to people who read J.K. Rowling's transphobic manifesto some months ago. We're talking about an overwhelming number of young trans men, young trans boys, a disproportionate amount of trans boys compared to trans girls. Also, a disproportionate amount of autism diagnosed in the trans community, as well as, what's the other one? But these are things that ultimately have no bearing on an individual's ability to consent. That's what this is all about. Can kids consent to the treatment? In the UK, there's this notion called Gillick consent. It's about children being able to consent to things. And they basically are like, yeah, we don't think an under 16-year-old can consent. We actually don't even think 16 and 17-year-olds can consent, but that's not really like our legal basis. And what's extremely frustrating about this is the claimant or the plaintiff is ultimately got on puberty blockers when they were 16. They began the process beforehand, but they got on puberty blockers when they were 16. So they went through the second assessment for their consent when they were 16. And I just stumbled onto this line of thinking, like, how can somebody who, like, the court does not rule that a 16-year-old cannot get on puberty blockers or cannot get on CSH. They do not effectively rule that. So how can somebody who consented to puberty blockers when they were 16 effectively disqualify or change the process for under 16s?
I don't know the British legal system enough to understand the concept of standing in that instance, but it sounds to me like, you know, it's also, I just don't understand that concept, but it's interesting, and I appreciate your telling us about it, Ani. And when you write that up, or if you make a video, send us an email and let us know, and we will link to it and tweet it out.
Okay.
Appreciate the call.
Yeah.
I'd say what the hell is going on over there, but, you know, glass houses with the U.S., we don't even provide any kind of minimum base of care as a right of health care. So, like, if we see a case like this in the United States, it might be someone taking their insurance company to court.
Indeed. Calling from a 847 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, it's Josh from Chicago.
Josh from Chicago. Happy New Year. What's on your mind?
Happy New Year. I'm very happy that my football team is in the playoffs, unlike some football teams.
Yeah, well, you guys are 8-8.
Yeah, well, you know, I'll be watching my team on Saturday.
Yeah, you will. Yeah, you will. I hope Trubisky throws 1 million picks because of your trash talk. Go on.
He looked pretty good the other day.
Yeah, I actually root for him. I don't know why I'm being I feel bad for the guy. All right.
I smell spin-off show.
It's so raw for me. It's so raw. Keep going.
But anyways, yeah, I wanted to call because I listened to the sort of force the vote, or part of the force the vote town hall, as much as I could take. We did it on January a few days ago, but it's not about Jimmy Dore either. It's more about the fact that I was really bothered by a lot of the things that particularly Brianna Joy Gray has been posting on Twitter, but also saying in the town hall, and that she's largely she promotes Jimmy's behavior when he viciously attacks AOC, but also people in these town halls who disagree with him by not calling it out, and Katie Halper as well. But also they've taken to just lying, straight up lying about DSA and their stance on this. They're saying that there was this email that went out to hundreds of thousands of people that a majority of people supported force the vote as a strategy, and that there's this tension between the rank and file members and the leadership, which is just not true. But also some of the tactics that they're taking are, it's kind of I don't want to say Trumpian, but they're distorting the truth in a way that is and making allies with these conspiracists online that are, it's very disturbing to me. They're going down a road that I think is very disturbing. I don't know if you followed this stuff in the last week.
I mean, I'm going to say that I have not followed it too much. There's been a couple of videos that people obviously have sent to me, and that I saw. I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, it is not. I understand why people would take issue with other people being on a call with Jimmy as he espouses conspiracy theories, or he's abusive to the other people on the call. And my attitude towards that is essentially, if people want to be associated with that, they're more than willing to. If they think in the long run that's going to be helpful to them, good luck. I think, just about I think the line of carnage that Jimmy Dore leaves in his wake is pretty significant, and I think your credibility is damaged by associating with him. Now, people are like, "Why are you associating Jimmy Dore so much with this thing?" Look, I've invited people who are associated with that with the pro argument to come on. They declined. I'm willing to talk to some of those people about it. It's sort of over now. And now I think we move into the phase where Jimmy Dore is still just playing out his anger towards, a now sophomore Congressperson who's been a sophomore for a day or two, or probably will, I think sophomore for a day or two, that they're not exerting their power over the entire Congress to get something done. I personally think that the rollback of the PAYGO stuff is really important.
Huge.
And that, and that's what it is. Like, if other people want to host this and they find it in their best interest and they think it's healthy, I think people have the ability to assess them as, on their own. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I can tell you this. There was a couple of clips that were sent to me that I think were really problematic. This is one right here, which I think is indicative of the limitations of Jimmy Dore, period. And I did. So it did tell me that apparently both Jimmy and Bree acknowledged that this was going nowhere until I came out with a tepid video saying, and I still think it was a good idea to leverage the vote. And it happened. The vote was, in fact, leveraged. And at the time, I don't remember exactly what I said. This was a month or two ago. I can't remember when it was. I said, Jimmy Dore's got this idea. I am a little bit hesitant to do it because I know the guy's an idiot. But the idea is, somewhat decent. And that is leverage the vote for Nancy Pelosi. He wants to do it for a vote for Medicare for all. I think at the time I said, I'm not sure that's the best thing to do it for. It might be for a committee seat or whatever it was. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure that was the gist of it. And I spoke to some people subsequent to that, people who, are just on background, were like, there's stuff that's going on. And I was like, they should try and make it more public that we can leverage it. And they're like, I don't think they know how to do that. And which, I can understand, how do you leverage the rollback PAYGO rules? I mean, there's ways. I think they could do some work on that. And so I dropped it. And then the next thing I know, Jimmy is using it as a way of basically unmasking AOC, who by any definition is the most left, maybe not the most left. Maybe there's one or two other people who are left there. I don't know. But we have 435 people in Congress. And I think certainly Jamie could, and I think we all could, to a certain extent, talk about the complete limitations of what we can expect someone to be elected there. But within that, right, they're Congress people. Within that, they operate in that sphere. There is no doubt that there is anybody to the left. Maybe there's one or two people, I don't know, you can make your own assessment, then the squad in the House. That's just a fact. They may not be as left as you want them to be. Maybe they're more left than you want them. It doesn't matter. That's just the reality. And to say that they're because they don't follow your strategy, which again, I haven't heard a whole sort of rollout for the strategy. I've listened to all the things. I get it. We're going to find out who doesn't want Medicare for all. We're going to primary them, which is incidentally exactly why AOC has less power and doesn't have that seat on that important committee, the Energy and Commerce Committee, is because she was challenging them. She was the tip of the spear, as it were, in terms of challenging establishment Democrats where possible, with the means that they have at their disposal through Justice Democrats, et cetera. And then presumably you challenge these people. I don't know how, if you've debilitated or undercut the power that AOC has, you're going to challenge them because she's the biggest vehicle for that in the,
she
in the party.
fundraises for all of these primary challenges, and
Without a doubt.
that she's a shill.
But she's a shill now.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, there's going to be, I guess, the YouTubers are going to be able to challenge across the country. You're going to take the 45,000 people or 50,000 people who have signed up for Force the Vote, and they're all going to get out there and mobilize. They won't go to a rally, but they'll get out there and mobilize and challenge people in all these districts. They're going to develop the whole mechanism and apparatus to challenge those people. Then when they've knocked off those people, right, then you're going to have a house full of Democrats who are going to presumably then vote from Africa. I mean, this is
this is already a multi-year strategy, is what pisses me off about this, right? That they're saying that because we don't think this is the smartest way to allocate power, we're selling.
You're responsible for everybody who doesn't have Medicare for all tomorrow.
Right,
but this is already like
AOC's responsible. But you guys are already taking a long-term strategy, but she leveraged it for PAYGO, so it could happen more quickly, or other progressives did.
Well, it opens up the door and it gets one obstacle out of the way, because that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a series of getting rid of obstacles. Okay, so wait a second. So we find out the vote happens. We find out who the 120, let's say 105, 110, 130, whatever it is, Democrats who don't want Medicare for all. How are we going to, what do we need to do to primary them based upon Medicare for all? And this is, I'm now like in the world of Force the Vote. Well, what do you need to do, Josh, if you're going to do that? You need to, what? What is the word that I'm looking for? It starts with an O. Organize, right? Here is Jimmy Dore just a day ago, I guess, or I don't know when he said this, about that organization. This was on, this is yesterday. Here it is. Listen to this.
I'm calling out the left, the people who claim to want this fight their whole life. It's here, and they ran for cover. So I'm calling them out and shaming them. Shame on the DNC, shame on the DSA, shame on the nurses union. Where the fuck are you? I don't need you to be my friend. Where the fuck? I'm asking you to answer for your own self. Shame on you. This is a big clarifying moment for the left right now. The people on the left aren't fighters. That's the problem. They're not fighters.
That's what he wanted to say.
The squatters they're not fighters.
The
DSA should be banging they should be fucking hounding the squad right now to do this. They should be hounding them. They should be showing up at their houses, doing rallies. They're not doing anything.
They should be showing
we've been organizing. We need to organize more. We do not need to organize more for Medicare for all. It's organized. The whole country's for it. We do not need, don't let anyone tell you that. We are organized. Now it's time to threaten the people who are in power that if they don't do it, you're going to hold them accountable. That's the only thing. Do you see how AOC is bending herself in a pretzel? Now she's scared. Why? Because I'm right.
Honestly.
AOC's terrified.
If this guy,
she's terrified.
If this guy wasn't such a total moron, I would think that he was like nefarious. But he's just a moron, idiot, and maybe a little bit juiced up. I don't know. But here, put up that here's what the nurses union are doing. Now it's organizing. Now I don't know how you're supposed to scare.
You don't have to organize.
How do you scare AOC if you're not going to organize? Like Jimmy Dore does not vote in the Bronx. He doesn't vote in North Brooklyn. He doesn't vote in Queens. And here is the nurses and Healthcare Now, and they are organizing. Now, I know it's disgusting and stupid because everybody's for it. And the reason why it's not happening is because the 5 members of the squad are not using magic to make everybody bend to their will. I mean, this is just...
No, it's not. The magic is the second most important part. The most important part is not going on my fucking show.
Well, yes, of course. Of course.
If all it took was for people to know and support Medicare for all, Bernie would have been the nominee because 87% of Democrats support Medicare for all.
But they don't see it as urgent enough to take to the streets and primary Democrats and punish them based on their vote yet. What we need to do is take the time and take that kind of energy, unite as leftists, and spend the next 2-4 years organizing and building up the strategy behind getting Medicare for all into state parties and into state representatives' minds, and then also into Democrats who may be amenable to this kind of thing. And then strategically, once we've gotten rid of PAYGO and those obstacles, do this kind of thing. It's not something that's going to happen by the fly of your pants because some online loudmouth leftist does it. And people who I've respected in the past have gone along with it. He's an abusive person. And I feel like, we talked about the merits of the strategy in and of itself, but the fact that they originated from him should give a lot of people pause.
Well, it's not even about the strategy anymore. Here's the thing. Like, this started out as a tactical debate between mostly left liberals, social democrats, progressives, whatever. And it has quickly transformed into something that has very little connection to that whatsoever. People are not engaging the way you engage as an organizer. They're engaging the way you engage with a cult leader. And they've already set up an NGO corporate structure, by the way, real socialist guys, real revolutionary. And I'm afraid of this on a number of levels, right? Because in the grand scheme of things, I don't really think it matters. Despite how many people I see being mean in my mentions, it's not actually that many people in the real world. But I do worry that this is channeling people who are like legitimately pissed off and might have otherwise become effective organizers in the DSA or whatever into this like weird spectacle culty way of doing politics that is not politics at all. The DSA, not your enemy, by the way, closest thing to a socialist party that we've had in this country in God knows how long. But the thing about DSA is, if you care so much about what tactics we're pursuing, you have to join the DSA and you have to come to a meeting about it. And you're not allowed to yell at people when they disagree with you. And you should not be engaging with your comrades the way you engage with some like asshole neoliberals on Twitter,
Yeah, Jimmy wanted a referendum on the squad and AOC because, like, this whole get on the page about Medicare for all, where were you in the primary? Because I think there's actually a problem where people did like Medicare for all, but they were confused about saying everybody supports it. People thought Joe supported it. And there should have been one left candidate. And Jimmy Dore had a lot to say about Elizabeth Warren, but Tulsi was the exact same thing. It was a distraction from the real guy who could have fought for it. So yeah, I mean, I agree. He never really wanted to see any kind of exercise of power. He wanted a referendum so he could say, these people are as foolish as I've been.
Yeah, and I think it also shows how the limits of left-wing populism, right? When you don't have a systemic critique of the system and of capitalism, it leads you to a kind of conspiratorial thinking where you just blame individuals, whoever you think is standing in the way. And I'm afraid that this is going to pivot to some sort of like vague populism, like the 5 Points movement in Italy, that's closer to the kind of like right-wing party that we see in Europe that combines vague hatred of elites, right? Populism is an extremely nebulous thing with a vague social democratic program with, more reactionary elements, which I think have already been welcomed into this movement.
I just need to add this. The following has been paid for by MSNBC.
Yes, obviously. We actually,
I'm contractually required to do that.
We get our callers. We get them the MSNBC talking points before they call in, and first we get them checked by PYT, then MSNBC, then here, and then we all work together. Right? You got your memo this morning.
Yep, I read my memos every day from MSNBC when they tell me how to fight for communism. That's who's giving me my marching orders.
Josh, appreciate the call. See you at 30 Rock.
And again, I know that like, yes, it's just very few people and it's just so online. But I think Jamie's right that a lot of people are participating in politics online and learning about things and listening to shows like this and listening to shows like Jimmy's. And this has reverberating effects.
Yeah.
not a real grassroots movement. It depoliticizes people, but it doesn't matter. But like, who gives a shit though if you're getting YouTube views, right? And if you're trending on Twitter, I mean, that's really what this all comes down to. There are some people who got into this in good faith, but I think it's become such an emotional thing for people where it's all about, who am I fighting with? Who am I feuding with on Twitter? Who said something mean about me? And they're being divisive because it's all about an ego thing. And it's extremely disappointing.
And these people have clearly never been to an organizing meeting in their lives. Like, we're allowed to disagree with each other on tactics without saying, you don't really want this thing at all. Like, people need to learn those skills, and we need to politically educate the followers while, undermining and isolating demagogues like Jimmy Dore.
A lot of Jimmy, independent of that, I'm not accusing everybody else who's on the panel with Jimmy because I disagree with their tactic that they don't actually want Medicare for all. Jimmy, I don't think really gives a shit, because it's way better for him to have a Democratic Party that's failing and a left that's failing, so that he could be the pure one and that everybody else can be shills like AOC, right? But for other people involved in this, I don't doubt the purity of the intentions at first, but it has become such a ridiculously narcissistic fight between personalities. And I would never accuse them of not wanting Medicare for all, because I want Medicare for all. I just disagree on strategy. That's what they're doing, because they don't agree with it.
I think some of these people are too online and, maybe cut their teeth fighting with centrist liberals during the Bernie campaign, where it's okay to be a dick to each other because those people are enemies, and they're applying that to their comrades now in a way that is not good.
Exactly. They see Democrats, or they see, sorry, Sam, last thing, they see Democrats and other progressives as the singular enemy at this point, because that's who they're talking to online, and that's what their politics has become.
Let me just remind you that the Fun Half is brought to you by iHeartRadio, you and me both. Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton sits down for can't even do it seriously.
If all the things people have said about me, that's one of the ones that it's ridiculous.
You know what? Maybe later in the week I'll play that clip about, Jimmy went on to say that I'm getting emails from MSNBC and I'm funded by Clinton or whatnot. I don't know.
Did you guys see that there was a football game being played at the Lockheed Martin Bowl? That's what it was called. That's also a sponsor of our show.
There you go. Yes.
Coincidentally.
Today's program brought to you by Lockheed Martin and Hillary Clinton. The irony is that I can understand the limitations of and why this wouldn't happen, because I don't know, and nobody was running. But had Tim Ryan run again for speaker, I would have advocated. Forget leveraging the vote. I would just have voted for Tim Ryan. I was in favor of putting in somebody who had a weaker control over the caucus, and I've been espousing that for probably a year at this point. But the fact is that I also think that that I do not have a monopoly on the awareness of the inner workings of the House and the perception that different members of the House have as to what is going to have their power or not. Everybody makes compromises in every endeavor that they do in one fashion or another. I wear a collared shirt now 4 days a week. That's not exactly what I would be inclined to do. I'd probably want to wear a soft collared shirt the first 4 days of the week. But I don't. It's just one of the compromises I make. Jimmy probably doesn't drink all the liquor he wants to on his show. That's one of the compromises you make. You're doing your show. I think he still holds back a little bit. But my broader point is look, if there is an assessment, we can trust no one in Congress, but at one point, you have to trust people. There are members of, who the left consider darlings, who I know have a different, who are perceived differently within the caucuses, some people on the left are considered to, sort of be not necessarily the most trustworthy of people. And I'm talking about Congress people than others. There's but they play a different role on the inside than they do on the outside. And that doesn't mean that they don't have value to us who are trying to push Congress and, the elected leaders and to the left. That's not necessarily a completely mutually exclusive project from pushing citizens to the left and organizing citizens. There are times where those things intersect a little bit, and there are times when they don't, and but they should both be, they should both be ongoing. But there are different constraints on Congress people than there are on YouTubers, and you don't have to be a genius to understand that. And you don't have to be a genius to understand that, like, look, there's no one to the left of these dozen or so people that are being demonized in Congress. And these are the options. There's not going to be Medicare for all that is going to be developed by a third party. It's going to involve our government and the people who are there. And the question is, how do you get them there?
It's all the same people. It was the Jill Stein cycle in 2016, and it's the Tulsi cycle from last year. And now it's the same nonsense over and over. The same people who are so online and preyed upon by people who truly see politics as emotion. People like Jimmy. But you just kind of got to let it roll off like a duck. But unfortunately, because of Jamie is saying, like, it actually does have an effect on depoliticizing people.
Yeah. And that's a huge, huge problem. And one of the most frustrating things about this is it's not that these squad members are not left enough. I think some of them might even be socialists. I don't know. Like, you primary them, you put in different people. The squad is the same size. You get the same outcome. Like, they are doing what they can. And if you're going to engage in bourgeois politics at all, you have to be smart about it. And you can't be sacrificing all of your political capital for something that is, mostly performative when you have other options like eliminating PAYGO, like getting rid of Richard Neal from the Ways and Means Committee, things that could actually move the ball towards Medicare for all. Obviously, those are things you try first. But again, just because you disagree on a tactic doesn't mean that, one person's good and one person's evil. Like, this is what we do in the movement. This is what we do as organizers. You discuss things, you allow for the fact that you could be wrong, and, you got to listen to other people. But these are all skills that the media does not inculcate in you. And like, this is one of the reasons I've stayed at DSA, honestly, even as I've become more busy with my, my work in media, because I don't want to lose touch with what it means to actually be an organizer and work with other people and all of these skills that, you don't always get in a field where you get to talk into a microphone and you get attention and instant gratification and money and other things.
Let's go to final call of the day. 423 area code.
Hey, Sam, you hear me?
Yep. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You are the final caller of the day.
Hey, this is Jake from Tennessee, East Tennessee.
Jake from East Tennessee. What's on your mind, Jake?
Yeah, how are you guys doing?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad, man. I feel like I'm just continuing the trend of this, like, force the vote, like, call.
Go for it.
I get that it seems like it is. I mean, I get that it seems big right now, especially like how connected we all are online. So, just I guess real quick, I've got my notes here, non-NBC or MSNBC, but I have a page of notes. Gonna grab that real quick. So I've got this tweet from Kyle Kalinske written down from sometime last night that I think kind of hinted at some of the bigger issues. I mean, it's like you all have been talking about how important organizing is, but it was, I'm sorry, but there's no excuse for the left not to have organized in the last few years to mount a challenge to Pelosi. She's hostile to your goals, and she has a 28% approval rating. What the F were you doing this entire time? And they think they have another thing coming if they think, if they think playing nice, she'll bequeath her throne to them when she retires. It's 1,000,000% going to Hakeem Jeffries. And it's like, yeah, like I absolutely agree. Like, where the fuck are we? Like,
yeah,
we have to be organizing as a movement. Like, this isn't like, are we going to flip 100 incumbents' opinions on Medicare for all? Like, is that the strategy? Like, are we going to realistically primary them? Great. I mean, we're probably going to primary. Who are we going to put up? Who's going to primary them?
I saw that tweet and I thought that, there I'm in lockstep with Kyle, right? Like that, the left should have been organizing a mounting, should have been recruiting somebody to mount a challenge to Pelosi and should have been doing it for a while. And they didn't do that. I mean, they dropped the ball there. Yeah. But again, like there's a lot of people in Congress who are so skittish about mounting this challenges to Pelosi based on the last time around.
Yeah. And so, like I said, I'm from East Tennessee. Tennessee's House elections this year, we had 7 Democrats challenging incumbents. Only one of which, she was from Chattanooga, was supported Medicare for all, but she ran a relatively weak campaign.
All right. Well, wait a second. Isn't that what AOC's been doing? She was spearheading an effort to took out another leader of the Democratic caucus in Eliot Engel. It's like the idea that this stuff is going to happen overnight in 2 years, that you're going to go from freshman congressperson to being able to, spearhead a primary challenge to 100 different Democrats. Like, I'm sorry. Like, this is like, I don't know. Like what, like, it is, I don't know who the left is in this. I mean, if the comment is like there wasn't enough done in Congress by the left to recruit somebody who was going to run against Pelosi, it's like, I guess I just don't know who the heck was going to do that. I mean, she's been in power for 15 years. She has doled out so many favors. There is a strong institution there. Really, the work should not be on getting rid of Pelosi at this point, because that was almost a fait accompli. It is who's going to succeed her. Like, where is the challenge to Hakeem Jeffries? That is where I would be spending my time, is not trying to take out Pelosi, who's in her 80s, because that's not going to happen. But I want to know who's going to be competing against Hakeem Jeffries, and that may be building. I mean, although there is no doubt in my mind, that like these online attacks, and even if it's like in Business Insider or whatever it is on AOC, Chuck Schumer was like, phew. There's no doubt in my mind, right? Like, I mean, this is like, we're undercutting our own allies. And yes, I got news for you. Within the Democratic caucus, they are our allies. I know that's a horrific thing to say. I know that's so painful for people, because we want our special Congress people from transcendent and, whatever it is, parallel universe X, who's challenging Pelosi right now. And they've got a caucus with like all these other Congress people from parallel universe X. But this is the situation that exists on planet Earth in the United States of America. It sucks. But now that you've said it sucks, how are you going to make it better? And by undercutting, and listen, and the idea that I don't see how Jimmy Dore undercuts AOC. Well, then how do you see Jimmy Dore scaring AOC? How do you think like there's any accountability? Of course it undercuts AOC, because you have, 10,000 people, whatever, going out there, getting on Twitter, creating the sense that AOC is weaker. That's it.
I'd be scared if I was AOC in a room with Jimmy Dore, but
the slurring.
But I've got no problem with criticizing AOC and the squad when they take positions or do things that I actually think are bad. But in this case, I believe them that they are fighting for Medicare for all, and it seems very counterproductive to cast suspicion.
Like, I mean, the difference between saying that vote was bad, right, or or they were weak in this committee, or they, the fact that they didn't challenge this is bad. To sit there and basically promote the idea that they're a fraud, that that this is a mask off moment, that they're useless. Okay, you're done. Roll it up. Stop talking about politics as it exists now. Go and talk about the third or fourth party that you're going to start.
Write a sci-fi novel about it.
And spend your time there.
Yeah. Like, spend your time in play Magic the Gathering. I don't give a shit. You're going to talk about politics. You talk about politics as it exists now within realities so that you can allow people to mobilize and that you can allow power to grow on the left. That's all I'm interested in, period.
Yeah.
All right.
I would love to hear Brianna Joy Great talk to more communist organizers like Boots Riley, because I think that is an analysis that is lacking in a lot of this force the vote stuff.
Okay, Canadian viewer, I wish you'd critique Dore without the personal attacks.
Well, it's all about it. It's all integral to understanding where this began.
Yeah, this has gone beyond a mere tactical debate, guys. That ship has sailed.
But it's also sort of like, right. Like, I mean, the critique was there. That was on day one. And I know his fight for Medicare for all seems genuine because he almost killed himself due to medical debt that he incurred. I know that story. Okay. He's fine now. He has plenty of cash. And
he's making more off of this every day.
I don't think his arguments are valid because he faced medical debt. And I don't think they're invalid because he has, whatever it is, a ranch in Rancho Cucamonga or wherever the hell it is. I don't care either way. I'm assessing what he's saying on its merits. And when the idea was to leverage the vote, I came out in favor of it. When it became apparent that his ask was A, silly, B, really just a function of attacking these people, it became a stupid idea. And, it was like the car showed up and I thought it was a little rickety, but I was like, okay. But then he took it and he drove it into a wall. And I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say quickly that I think it has gotten too personal, but I think that starts with Jimmy. I mean, look at the whole David Sirota thing. And I mean, that's just to start this off at the very beginning. I mean, I think to my involvement has been, okay, if you can turn out some protesters, great. I'm not going to crap on it on Twitter, but every time I see you just implying DSA members are on the take, yeah, I'm going to call you a bullshit artist. And I think he's a short seller of the left. If you know what short selling is, I think that's the lens to look at Jimmy Dore at.
Matt, that's really well said.
Kush Limbaugh, yes, indeed. Sam, can you describe how deflated you felt when you realized you were still going to have to talk about Dore after the holidays? Pretty.
Oh my God.
Pretty deflated.
I mean, I was watching football all day yesterday, and then I see #fraud squad trending on Twitter, and I'm like, what the?
I mean, look, it's going to die down after a while. And when we start getting into the actual business of doing this stuff and people are actually, work is going to make a difference as opposed to just showing up and having a microphone. There are people who are trying to brand and figure out what they're going to do in an era when, frankly, it's like Jamie said, if you have no actual critique and you have no interest in how, in the sort of day-to-day grind of how, the sausage gets made or the politics, what are you left with?
And you have no power too. Don't forget.
Right.
This whole thing is an expression of powerlessness on the part of the left. And it just seems to be snowballing and feeding back into something even less powerful and more destructive.
Because you only attack those who are just sort of the idea that forced the vote turned into a YouTube war. It's just it's ridiculous.
It was so frustrating to see what looked from afar like an organizing spreadsheet, right? I'm very familiar with these as someone who's actually done organizing. And then I look a little closer and, what they're trying to organize for is to get more media personalities to say that they're right.
Jamie,
what?
Yeah, Jamie's just mad that Sam was to the left of Chapo and herself, I think, on that spreadsheet.
Well, that too was quite the treat to see me listed as like a technocrat snake, I believe.
Yes.
Wait, what chart was this? I missed.
Somebody made a chart of all like the media personalities and where they stand on the forced vote, and there was like the left column, which is everybody supportive of it. There's the agnostic, which you were in, and then there was the far right technocrat snakes, which Jamie and all the Chapo guys were in.
Bingo.
Did I make it into that?
You did, yeah. You were right above me
snake too,
in
course,
that
yeah.
column.
Yes, you're a well-known right-wing technocrat, Jamie.
Wu-Tang Clan. Sam, any idea? Let me read a bunch of IMs and let's get out of here. We're here too late. Wu-Tang Clan. Sam, any idea why Pelosi didn't do a full vote on the checks instead of the voice vote? She did do a full vote on the checks.
She did.
They had to suspend the rules, and it was actually a pretty steep hill to climb, and they did it. I mean, she deserves credit for that.
Yeah.
They first did the tried to do unanimous consent. The Republicans shot that down. Now, I don't know if she would have done this if they hadn't had to come back anyways to do that veto override, but they did do the full vote and they sent it to the Senate. Flairchild, also Abbott is horrible. Great display on Fox the other day. Sorry about Texas. Got to be better.
Yeah.
Heretical Christian, congratulations on 1 million subscribers. Took long enough. Yes, indeed. Stigma Vision. Scott Morrison is a useless chud. Australia gave the world Julian Assange to say sorry for giving the world Rupert Murdoch. A Square. MR, thank God it's 2021. Sadly, bar is so low for 2021 to be better. Agreed, Mad King knew he was being taped. These things are twofers and threefers of him. He gets to be aggrieved, gets to build up expectation for his next rally and show on Capitol Hill Wednesday, and chaos to distract from the vaccine distribution debacle. TD Lizzie, I want to give a shout out to my fellow custodians as well as the bus drivers, cooks, maintenance, who are all covered under UE Local 799, who keep the city schools running and disinfected. Yes, thank you. I'm distantly related to Emma through Union General Joseph Hooker. It's thought that the women who followed him and his men provided various services known as Hooker's girls.
Yes, this
were
is
the
family
origin
lore.
of the pejorative hooker, which I've had to hear insults ad nauseum.
Who is this?
Your cousin.
Well, what's his name?
G Dizzle for Shizzle, of course.
Right, your birth name. Well, I hope
Geniusle for Shizzle Hooker.
to see you at the family reunion.
There you go. PCT Joe, as a healthcare worker for the state of Wisconsin who got COVID-19 over the new year, the stories coming out about the delays in vaccines in the state and some will expire are infuriating. It's hard to think straight. My understanding of that story from Wisconsin about the person who like took him out, I agree. This is a separate issue, but that they took him out, spoiled them so they could prove that vaccines don't work. How insane do you have to be to do that? Shore Wrap, on their weekend show, Anna laid into Dore, Halper, and BJG. It was cathartic and much needed answer to the toxic BS coming from Dore, along with the disappointment stemming from Halper and Joy Gray enabling it. Mark the Scientist, 118 Democrats have signed on to H.R. 1384, Medicare for All. There are 222 Democrats in the House. Why does a bill with majority support among House Democrats not get a floor vote? Please, no more Dore. I'm tired of him getting attention. Why doesn't it? Well, I mean, I'm not clear that it won't in this session. It has in the past. It didn't in the last one. Part of it is because it can't get through a committee. And it's going to lose, obviously, because you don't just vote. Democrats aren't the only ones who vote. But if you know that, what is the value of that vote at this moment? I mean, if you know that there are 118 Democrats and maybe 10 of them, maybe 20 of them, or just signed it because they knew it meant nothing, but they know that it's not going to pass anyways, so they could still take that vote. Like, I just, like, what is this floor vote right now? And yeah, I think they should have a vote on it every day until it passes. And if we ever get a speaker or, we have any type of power there that would do that, then that'll happen. I don't think it's going to help it in any way, but I'm just curious is like, what is the value of it?
Well, it's a media-based strategy ultimately, which makes sense because these are very media-focused people, right? The idea is you can force at least a debate on the floor, get some news coverage, get some like heartfelt speeches in favor of Medicare for all, get people on the record opposing it. And that in and of itself is supposed to galvanize some sort of, progressive movement against the ones who won't support it, which is not, the craziest idea. I said it was an interesting idea when it first came up. I'm very open to different ways to fight for Medicare for all. But when I found out that there were other things that they could do to actually remove the barriers to getting it, I was like, well, that makes more sense. Also, we need to pair it with, on the ground organizing in the workplaces and in the streets. Otherwise, none of this stuff is going to do anything.
New Wrangler. I was deplatformed by David Pakman in a recent segment he did covering Sam's reading of my Dominion YouTube subs. I am. How low will this man go? Left is best. The funniest part is them saying that they're going to primary AOC over this. Please. I thought that the second they're a representative Democrat, they're sellouts. Ban Dongino. A lot of people use the Freedom Caucus as a model of what the squad should do, but the Freedom Caucus was bigger, better funded, more strongly aligned with that party's base in the mainstream conservative media and still never actually turned their demands into legislation. True. Social Buffalo. Oregon has had mail-in since 99. The Robin Commons. Hey, everybody, a reminder. Oh, that's right. Lee Carter is running for governor of Virginia. He's a DSA member who won in a heavy Republican district. He has a weird fundraising schedule limitation, so let's get on that. I'm not sure I understand that, but yeah, we should put him on the list. Maybe we should have like him on.
We need to get him like a minder for social media because I want to see him succeed, but I also think he could use a little discipline in the Twitter department.
I have lived in Oregon for my entire adult life and have voted via mail or drop box every election, much like how insurance deductibles are completely alien to people from outside the U.S. Voting booths and waiting in line at polling places are completely alien to me. Mail-in voting is incredibly useful and not an impediment to voter enfranchisement. Deep discounts on Forever Pools with the coupon code Left is Best. Free shipping with coupon code Sam. What are Forever Pools?
Forever pools are those pools that look like they like drop off of like a waterfall.
Right. Aren't they?
Yeah.
Oh, I think so. I think that's what they meant.
Forever pools. Oh, okay. All right. I messed up. All right. Three more of these. Abhishek, loving the fact that Trump is now going after Cotton for not supporting the coup attempt. Coach McGurk, more like Jimmy Dork.
Hell
and
yeah.
the final I am of the day. Can we leave Jimmy Dore in 2020 and not allow him to live rent-free in our heads? I suspect within a couple of days that'll be the case. All right, folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and